Chapter 4038. From a Hong Ing group to the manager of the North Island branch, Si Haixiao's position had changed a lot. Not only did he have his own connections, but more importantly, Nan Tianba and the others' uncles had spent a lot of money to help him get in touch with an amazing business performance. This made him, a supervisor who was not in charge of business, stand out in the Hong Chamber of Commerce and had the capital to compete for a higher position. Seeing that Si Haixiao had already put it this way, Nan Tianba and the others could not force him and could only nod silently. During this period of time, I'd better think of a way to investigate the whereabouts of Lin Air for you. Si Haixiao laughed. Although he was not familiar with the people and the place, he had a deep relationship with the Hong Ing Group's intelligence system. If he wanted to use the Hong Ing Group's intelligence force in the North Island, it was just a matter of a word. Thank you, Manager Si. Nan Tianba and the others were immediately overjoyed. They only wanted revenge against Lin Yi, but if they found Lin Air, not only could they avenge their third brother, Nan Tianyong, but they could also get a huge benefit like the Starring Stone. This matter was much more important. At the same time, Si Haixiao, Nan Tianba, and the others were planning on this side. After sending Hong Zhong away, Lin Yi went to find the Garbage King and gave him all the materials he needed, shocking the guy to the point where his jaw dropped. Although he listed 7 kinds of casting materials for Lin Yi and pointed out the way of auction, the King of Junk really did not expect that Lin Yi could buy them so smoothly. If it was him, he probably would not have the hope of collecting so many top-grade materials in his life. The casting materials had been collected, but the King of Junk did not immediately start casting. As a casting master, he needed to spend time to familiarize himself with these materials. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, the success rate would be worrying. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't have much to do during this time. The professional, the King of Junk, was in charge of the preparations. As for the daily life in the Welcome Pavilion, because of Su Lingqiang's sudden disappearance, Kong Mingming's group had obviously ceased all activities. Consequently, Lin Yi's life became peaceful. Murong Zhen gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Without Kong Mingming and the others to stand up for her, it would be impossible for her to defeat Lin Yi on her own. However, how could a vengeful creature like her give up so easily? Since there was no opportunity to push the boat along with the current, then he would take the initiative to create an opportunity and stir up more waves. While the King of Junk was making his final preparations, Lin Yi was cultivating as usual. Other than familiarizing himself with the new killer moves, he also needed time to stabilize his new realm. Previously, he had heard people say that every peak of the Foundation Establishment realm was an insurmountable threshold. The last time he broke through to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm was a clear example. This time, he was at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. If he did not diligently cultivate, then no matter how many pills he had, it would be useless. However, just a few days ago, there was a rumor about Lin Yi. It was widely spread in the 3 pavilions. "Boss, is it true that you like Miss Shangwan?" When they got together, Qiao Hong asked with a mischievous look. "Boss, is it true?" Even senior brother Bitter, Xiao Ran, and Li Zhengming had the word gossip written clearly on their faces. "What do you mean?" Lin Yi was confused. "Junior brother Lin, you don't have to pretend in front of us. It's not shameful to say it out loud. Just admit it." Even an honest man, like senior brother Bitter, began to wink at him. Lin Yi was even more confused. He looked at them with strange expressions and asked curiously, "What's going on? What do you want me to admit?" The few of them looked at each other. In the end, it was still Xiao Ran who slowly explained, "Recently, there's been a very hot rumor circulating in the streets. Boss, you like Miss Shangwan, but unfortunately, you didn't confess to her during the birthday party. Su Lingqiang realized the danger because he saw you alone with Miss Shangwan. That was why he attempted to rape you." This rumor could be said to have a nose and eyes, and it did somewhat corroborate the situation that day. In addition, the protagonists were influential figures like Shangwan Laner and Su Lingqiang, so it was completely in line with everyone's needs for gossip. It was reasonable that it spread more and more intensely in a place like the Three Pavilions. Looking at the few people with a strong thirst for knowledge, Lin E shrugged helplessly. It said that rumors stop with the wise. You guys don't really believe that there's such a thing, right? There's obviously a problem with the logic here. If I failed to confess to Shangwan Laner, then what's Su Lingqiong worried about? Just because he saw me getting closer to Shangwan Laner, he went crazy and tried to rape her. In the end, he ended up being wanted on the wanted list. Is Su Lingqiong so brainless? That's true. Senior Brother Bitter and the others nodded one after another. In fact, they didn't really believe this rumor, but it was an obvious fact that Shangwan Laner looked at Lin E in a different light. In the end, they just wanted to know if Lin E was interested in this Miss Shangwan. However, this rumor suddenly came out. Is it purely because everyone is gossiping, or is someone playing tricks in the dark? Lin E couldn't help but have more doubts between his brows. Regardless of what more far-reaching impact it would have in the future, this rumor had already put Lin E on fire. Next, Lin Yi's every move would be paid attention to. It was really not a small trouble. When Lin E said this, Senior Brother Bitter and the others' eyelids twitched at the same time. Yes, if this rumor is taken seriously, then Junior Brother Lin, you're in danger. This is equivalent to becoming the culprit of Su Lingqiong's current situation. Su Yuanzheng has always regarded him as the future of the Su family. It's hard to guarantee that he won't retaliate. That's a possibility. However, Su Yuanzheng is an elder, and he has always presented himself as a righteous and honorable person. The possibility of him making a move against me shouldn't be high. After all, that would give others a chance to use him against me. Lin, he shook his head. Compared to his own situation, he was more worried about Shangwan Lan. Although she had the dazzling halo of Shangwan Tianhua's only granddaughter, Shanghai Laner did not have much strength. She was a little naive and simple, and she often sneaked out with the little curly bear. If someone really wanted to target her, there was a chance that they would succeed. It was unknown whether they had a tacit understanding or Chow Chow just arrived on time. While they were discussing, they saw a small figure in the distance running towards Lin E. It was the little curly bear. Chapter 4039. Lin E didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't say much. Seeing that the little curly bear dared to come to the welcome pavilion in broad daylight, he sighed in his heart. Now that there was no big trouble like Su Lingqiong, his little senior sister was obviously not vigilant anymore. If it was in the past, she wouldn't have let the little curly bear come at this time. The purpose of the little curly bear coming was naturally to send a letter for Shanghai Laner. There were only 7 words in the letter. See you in the woods in 3 days. There were too many of them to count, and anyone else would have had no idea what they were talking about. Only Lin E himself knew which part of the forest he was referring to. 3 days passed by in a flash. Lin E arrived on time, and the location was the woods where he and Shanghai Laner had their first date. Sure enough, as soon as Lin E passed through the forest path, he saw Shanghai Laner waving at him from the pavilion. Little junior brother, I heard that you went to the extreme North Island a few days ago. How was it? Was it fun there? Shanghai Laner asked excitedly as soon as they met. It was all right, but this time I went to participate in the auction, so I didn't play much. Lin E smiled and nodded, but he was a little surprised in his heart. He had never told anyone about him going to the extreme North Island with Hongzhou. How come even the big Miss Shanghai Laner had heard about it now? Little did he know, on the first day that Nan Tianba and the others returned from the extreme North Island, they urged the Welcome Pavilion's pavilion master, Hu Yunfeng, to report this matter to the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions. They accused Lin E, as a newcomer, of not following the rules and running around. Even if they couldn't let Lin E receive any substantial punishment, they still wanted to use this matter to disgust him. However, everyone's focus was on the wanted Su Lingqiong, so no one paid attention to such a small matter. Of course, if Lin E made any more mistakes in the future, this matter would inevitably be brought up by people with ulterior motives. At that time, it would be one disaster after another. That's a pity. I heard from Fei Fei that the extreme North Island is very fun. It's just that my grandpa never goes there, and he never lets me go alone. Shangwan Laner's beautiful eyes turned, and she suddenly said, "How about we sneak out to play next time? And don't let my grandpa know." Quack. Lin, he was still wondering who the Fei that Shangwan Laner mentioned was. When he suddenly heard such a sentence, he couldn't help but be shocked. He hadn't even done anything with this little senior sister, but there were already rumors spreading everywhere. If he really brought her to the northernmost island, wouldn't he be caught and criticized? "What? Are you unwilling?" Shangwan Laner frowned. Lin reacted quickly. "Oh, I see. Let's wait for a chance. The extreme North Island is heavily guarded. You can't just go in whenever you want." "All right, then." Shangwan Laner pouted and suddenly said, "Little junior brother, this time you rarely go to the northernmost island. Did you bring a gift for me, your senior sister?" Lin, he was thinking about this matter. He immediately nodded and said, "I brought it." Saying that, he took out 2 strings of crystal blue necklaces from his arms and handed one of them to Shangwan Laner. Shangwan Laner suddenly became happy. She held the necklace and cheered, "Little junior brother, you have a conscience. Senior sister really didn't dote on you in vain. This necklace is so beautiful. I like it very much. Since little senior sister likes it, then it couldn't be better." Lin smiled with relief and then introduced, "These 2 necklaces, in fact, I found a blacksmith to guide me from the side these 2 days. I personally made it." "Really?" Shangwan Laner's eyes lit up when she heard this. The necklace was bought by someone else, and a necklace that Lin personally made. In her eyes, this necklace was completely different. This necklace was the result of Lin Yi's painstaking efforts. "Of course it's true. I bought a pair of blue photon crystals at the Extreme North Islands auction, so I had a sudden impulse to make a pair of mother and child necklaces. After injecting vital qi, the 2 necklaces can sense each other. Little senior sister, after you wear this necklace, if you encounter danger and get nervous, the vital qi I inject will fluctuate. So, no matter where you are, I can sense your position," Lin explained. The idea of making a mother and child necklace was not purely a whim, but after hearing the recent rumors, Lin thought of a way to protect Shangwan Laner in disguise. In this way, if she encountered any danger, Lin would be able to sense it. "It's so magical. Then I can't let little junior brother down." Shangwan Laner immediately jumped for joy and wore the blue photon crystals necklace in front of Lin. "How is it, little junior brother? Does it look good on me?" Shangwan Laner raised her neck and turned around. Her beauty was like that of a fairy descending to the mortal world. Even with Lin Yi's mental fortitude, he could not help but stare at her. "It looks great," Lin praised sincerely. "Little junior brother's mouth is so sweet. I like it," Shangwan Laner teased innocently. On the contrary, Lin an old man who had been in love for a long time, actually blushed in embarrassment. This time, Shangwan Laner asked Lin out for no special reason. It was purely for fun. Moreover, this little senior sister did not have any airs of a rich lady. It was relaxing and happy to be with her. There was a balance between work and rest. It was rare for Lin to accompany her to relax for a day. The next day, Lin calculated that it was about time. He immediately went to the secret cave base of the King of Rags and began to start the final countdown of casting. After these days of contact, Lin had a good understanding of the King of Rags. He also believed that this casting master, who had never had any outstanding achievements, could cast a powerful magic weapon to his liking with these rare materials that he had painstakingly collected. However, as a casting master himself, Lin naturally could not just be a carefree hands-off boss. Even if he could not control the whole casting process with his ability, it was not a big problem for him to help the King of Rags. Moreover, whether he succeeded or failed, he would definitely benefit a lot. The super rare materials, including the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land, were included in the casting process. This time, it was almost an unprecedented feat in the entire cultivation world. Not to mention Lin and the King of Rags, even the most powerful top casting master would be thrilled. The King of Rags had said to Lin more than once that this casting would be recorded in history and make him famous all over the world. Chapter 4040. The Garbage King didn't mention this change, but Lin could tell from his actions that the guy was even more careful than Lin, the person in question. He didn't want the slightest accident to happen. From the beginning to the end, the King of Worn Out looked at the whole casting plan again and changed it tirelessly. Even the word nitpicking was not enough to describe the King of Worn Out's strictness. After finishing the final preparations with the King of Worn Out, Lin asked, "Everything is ready. Is it time to start casting?" However, after the King of Junk cleaned his clothes again, he shook his head and said, "It's not working yet." Why not? Lin paused. As an assassin, his patience wasn't bad, but after going through so many rounds of preparation, even his patience was running out. The King of Worn Out deserved to be a research genius. Once he devoted himself to it, his persistence could not be tolerated by ordinary people. "Brother Lin, can you find some weapons or props that have been formed outside? It doesn't matter if they are of high or low grade. I have an idea that might be useful in casting," the King of Worn Out said while rubbing his forehead. After thinking for a while, Lin took out a ring and handed it to him, saying, "Will this ring of genuine chi work?" The King of Worn Out's eyes lit up. He immediately nodded and said, "Yes, as long as it is a formed wizard weapon. It's just an auxiliary material. Anyway, it's better to have more of this kind of weapon, just in case. If that's the case, I still have a few old weapons. Since I can't use them now, I can take them to forge for you." What Lin referred to were the heaven-level weapons he collected in the secular world. It was a good time to make use of them. After informing the King of Worn Out, Lin was about to find a secluded corner. He planned to take out those heaven-level wizard weapons from the space of the Jade Pendant. However, at this moment, an inexplicable throbbing came from his heart. The source was the genuine chi fluctuation of the Mother of Blue Light necklace on his chest. Lin had never thought that the mother and child necklace he had given to Shanghai Laner would come in handy in just a few days. Sensing Shangwan Laner's location through the mother-child necklace, Lin suddenly found that Shanghai Laner was very far away at the moment, although she was still within a range of North Island. But from the looks of it, at least they had completely left the territory of the three great pavilions. The connection between the mother and child necklaces will only give a clear warning when Shanghai Laner feels danger and is nervous. Therefore, the possibility of Shanghai Tianhua taking her out can be ruled out. This little senior sister might really be in big trouble if she is so far away from the three pavilions. Just as Lin sensed the crisis, far away in the wilderness on the other side of North Island. In a shabby martial arts field, Shanghai Laner was tied up. As for the little curly bear, who was always by her side, he was knocked unconscious. He was put in a sack and thrown in a corner, with a strong smell of alcohol on his body. "Hey, what do you want to do by bringing me to this shabby place?" Shanghai Laner's behavior at this time was simply shocking. Not only was he not afraid like before, he even shouted angrily at the two black-clothed masked men in front of him. At the same time, she also secretly glanced at the little curly bear in the corner, with hidden hope in her eyes. The cause of the accident this time was this little fellow. If the little fellow hadn't come out to steal wine to drink, Shanghai Laner would not have rushed out. Otherwise, if she had stayed in the heavily guarded territory of Rising Sky Pavilion, the two masked men in black in front of her would not have had a chance to kidnap her. However, thinking of the magical performance of the little fellow after drinking the spiritual wine last time, Shanghai Laner still had some confidence in the bottom of her heart. Even Su Lingchong's family jewels could be erased. It should be no problem to deal with these two masked men in black who did not look very strong, right? One of the masked men in black glanced at her and said in a hoarse voice that was obviously deliberately changed, "Do you still need to ask? Of course it's to kidnap you. Is it strange to kidnap a rich lady like you?" "TSK, kidnap this lady? Don't tell me you really dare to ask my grandfather for ransom?" Shanghai Laner curled her lips in disdain. Even if her own strength was not good, She could see that the strength of these two people was not to the extent of being abnormal. It was impossible for them to challenge her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua. Who told you that kidnappings must be for ransom? Humph, a rich lady like you is really ignorant. The masked man in black replied mockingly. Shanghai Laner was immediately stunned. At this time, the other masked man in black also opened his mouth. It was a rather familiar female voice. Without this big obstacle, Su Lingchong, boss will be able to smoothly ascend the position this time and become the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua. It's just a matter of time. The male masked man glared at her and carefully looked at Shanghai Laner. He turned his head and reprimanded, "Don't talk nonsense." The female masked man did not care. What's there to be afraid of? When the rice is cooked, do you think we'll be afraid that this little girl won't admit it? We're only doing this because we have no other choice. Otherwise, with boss's relationship with her, although it's not bad, there's still a long way to go to get the approval of Shanghai Tianhua. After all, his identity is not good. He's just a newcomer in the welcoming pavilion. He's not good enough. As the two masked men talked, they paid attention to Shanghai Laner's expression. However, they found that this little girl did not have the doubt and understanding that they had imagined. Instead, she looked at the two of them as if they were crazy. These two people must be sick in the head. I don't know what they're talking about. Shanghai Laner did not pay attention to the two people's words at all. She only secretly glanced at the little curly bear and found that the little guy was snoring like thunder. She was speechless and rolled her eyes. How could he sleep at such a crucial time? This little guy was really unreliable. Shanghai Laner was speechless. The two masked men in black were even more speechless than her. They had deliberately racked their brains to come up with these words just now and deliberately said it to Shanghai Laner face to face. In the end, this little girl did not take it seriously at all. What could they do? They really did not know whether this little girl, Shanghai Laner, was too careless or her brain was really not good. The direction of the words was so obvious. How could she not have any reaction after hearing it? The two masked men looked at each other speechlessly, but there was nothing they could do. They could not repeat these words to her face, right? That would really make them crazy. Chapter 40-41. After the man walked into the broken martial arts practice field, he carefully looked at the two people outside. After making sure that no one was looking at him, he quickly turned around and walked to Shanghai Laner, whispering, "Miss Shangwan, I actually pretend to be with boss. In fact, I'm in Chao camp, but my heart is in Han camp. I can help you inform him. Although I dare not let you go, you can write a letter to your grandfather. I will send it for you and ask him to save you." Write a letter? How should I write it? Shangwan Lan turned to look at him. It's very simple. You just need to tell your grandfather that you were kidnapped by Boss Lin Yi. The masked man in black guided her. Hearing this, Shanghai Laner's eyes curved into a beautiful crescent. Seeing that the masked man in black was staring at her eagerly, she suddenly smiled helplessly and said, "But I don't study much, and I can't read." Quack! The masked man in black almost choked to death. "You are the Miss Shangwan, the pearl of Tianhua's palm. How could you say that you can't read?" The masked man in black was stunned for a long time. He didn't know whether it was true or not. After all, some cultivators have been cultivating since childhood. It was not impossible for them to be illiterate. So he said, "How about this? You tell me to write it, and then you sign it." Shanghai Laner continued to shake her head. "No, I've never signed it. In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, who dares to ask me to sign it? You?" Even under the black mask, the masked man's twitching expression could be seen. "Do you still want your grandfather to know that you were kidnapped by Lin Yi and ask him to come here to save you?" "No, it's fun here. Let's talk about it in a few days. I don't want my grandfather to worry about me, so that he won't ask me to cultivate all day long." Shanghai Laner looked like she was going to take things as they came. Puff! The masked man in black almost choked to death by his own saliva. This time, he was completely at his wit's end. How could he deal with this girl? At this moment, outside the broken martial arts arena, the two masked men from before had already taken off their masks. If there were people in the welcoming pavilion, they would definitely be shocked. These two people were actually Kong Ming Ming and Murongjun. As long as we hand that chick's handwritten letter to Shangwan Tianhua, Lin Yi will be in deep trouble. Deacon Kong, you're really smart. Murongjun laughed excitedly. You flatter me. How could you come up with such a daring idea as kidnapping Shangwan Lan? Lady Murong's courage is truly admirable. Kong Ming replied proudly. At the same time, he turned his head to look at the broken arena. I just didn't expect that girl to be so stupid. She couldn't even hear such an obvious hint. Now we can only pin our hopes on Cha Wu. Don't worry, Deacon Kong. Although Cha Wu is a fence-sitter with no loyalty, he's not one to be trifled with. Even if it's just to save his own life, he wouldn't dare to ruin our plan, Murongjun said confidently. As the two of them were talking, Cha Wu had already come out from the other side. His head was hanging low, and he looked dejected and speechless. Cha Wu, how did it go? Is it done? Kong Ming asked. Sigh, don't mention it. Cha Wu looked extremely depressed. After listening to Cha Wu's report, both Kong Ming and Murongjun were dumbfounded. How did Shangwan Tianhua raise his only granddaughter? She's already been kidnapped. How can she still be so open-minded? Is she stupid? Kong Ming thought about it and made a decision immediately. A long delay may cause trouble. We can't wait any longer. Lady Murong, you should go back and report now. Anyway, Lin Yi has been appearing and disappearing mysteriously recently. We don't know where he is hiding. No matter what you say, you are right. All right. Murongjun hesitated for a while, but she nodded and agreed in the end. It was actually quite a risky thing to report Lin Yi. However, since Kong Ming had already said so, she couldn't just reject him. If the two of them had an internal conflict, it would be over. After all, Shanghai Laner's identity was not to be underestimated. Every moment they waited would increase the danger. Murongjun immediately set off for the three major pavilions and went straight to the law enforcement hall to report. She claimed that she accidentally saw Lin Yi and his men kidnapping Shanghai Laner. As soon as she said that, the entire law enforcement hall was shocked. Last time, she was raped by Su Lingqiong. How long had it been this time? She was kidnapped again. Could it be that this year was the year of Shanghai Laner's birth? Not only was the report shocking, but the law enforcement hall's reaction, or more accurately, the hall master Ramjia's reaction was even more shocking. Within an hour after receiving Murongjun's report, the law enforcement hall directly issued an arrest warrant to arrest Lin Yi without even notifying his relative, Shanghai Tianhua. Such a decisive and swift reaction was like heaven and earth compared to the time when Nan Tianyong had been killed. Even Murongjun, the person who had exposed the truth, felt that it was unbelievable when he saw all of this. She thought that the law enforcement hall would at least interrogate her carefully. She had even made a mental draft in advance. However, she didn't expect that things would go so smoothly. It was so smooth that she was a little depressed. She had prepared for nothing. She hadn't even shown her ability, but she was not allowed to speak. However, thinking of what Su Lingqiong had done before, it should be understandable. When it came to Shanghai Laner, the speed was indeed fast. As soon as the arrest warrant was issued, the three pavilions were in an uproar again. What was more surprising was that only 2 hours after the arrest warrant was issued, Lin, who was still ignorant of all this, was directly caught on the spot. Seeing that his arrest warrant was jointly suppressed by a group of experts of the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi finally realized that all this was a conspiracy aimed at him. These days, he was busy studying how to cast weapons with the King of Rags, so his thinking was somewhat out of line with the outside world. If it had been in the past, with Lin Yi's usual cautious style, he should have been vigilant when he found that Shanghai Laner was in danger. He would never swagger back to the welcome pavilion and even go up to see his arrest warrant. However, it was too late now. Falling into the hands of the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi couldn't escape by force with his own strength. Everything else depended on Ram Jia's mood. Judging from his contact with Ram Jia at the birthday party last time, with Ram Jia's arrogant and domineering personality, Lin Yi's intuition told him that he should not be the type of person who liked to play tricks. If he wanted to deal with him, there was no need for him to take such a big detour and even use such a sensitive person as Shanghai Laner to make an issue. Chapter 4042. If he could reason with him and move him emotionally, he might be able to fight for a chance to escape when Ram Jia questioned him. However, Lin Yi soon discovered that he had thought of all this too simply. After he was caught, he was directly locked in the dungeon, and Ram Jia did not show up from the beginning to the end, nor did he give him any chance to speak. Being locked in the cold and dark dungeon without any response, Lin Yi was completely helpless. In the past, when Shanghai Laner was still here, he could still be rescued if he was locked in. But now that Shangwan Laner was missing, he could not even protect himself. Who would come to help him? As for senior brother Ku Bai and the others, their weight was simply not enough. They could not even enter the dungeon, let alone be of any help. Just when Lin Yi was at a loss of what to do, the dungeon doors suddenly opened, and a burst of dense footsteps approached from afar, stopping only when they reached the door of his dungeon. Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate in his heart. Looking at this posture, could it be that Ram Jia was finally ready to interrogate him? At this moment, not far from the door, an old but dignified voice sounded. "Open the door. All of you go out. This old man wants to see him alone." Lin Yi was slightly stunned until he saw the face of the person who came, and was immediately shocked, although the other party was only wearing an extremely ordinary yellow robe. And at first glance, he was just an ordinary old man, but the aura that was revealed from his every movement was inexplicably awe-inspiring, and even could not help but give birth to a trace of the impulse to surrender. The person who came was actually Shangwan Laner's grandfather, Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. Shangwan Tianhua swept his gaze across the prison cell. It was filled with filthy and smelly things. There were even all sorts of venomous snakes and venomous insects entrenched in them. He smiled faintly and said, "After so many years, this brat Gong Yangjia still likes to do this. I wonder where he got so many venomous creatures." After saying that, Shanghai Tianhua used his feet to clear away a pile of moldy straw. There were also a few venomous snakes entrenched on it. They sat on the ground without a care and waved at Lin Yi. "Don't just stand there. Sit down and talk." This was not the first time that Lin Yi had seen Shanghai Tianhua, but compared to the high and mighty image of the big shot at the birthday party last time, the one in front of him he had clearly changed into another kind of temperament, a kind of amiable temperament like that of an old man next door. The pressure from before had also disappeared in an instant. Lin Yi stared blankly for a long while before he walked over and respectfully greeted. "This disciple is Lin Yi. Greetings, Pavilion Master Shangwan." Shanghai Tianhua nodded and gestured for Lin Yi to sit down before saying, "At the last birthday party, I still remember that you gave Little Lon 2 supreme-grade foundation building pills. As a newcomer, you gave such a precious gift. You're very thoughtful. I thank you on behalf of Little Lon. Pavilion Master Shangwan is too kind. Little senior sister has taken good care of this disciple. Giving her a little gift to express my sincerity is what I should do." Lin Yi had already calmed down and restored his usual calm composure. Shanghai Tianhua couldn't help but secretly look up to Lin Yi. With his status and strength, not to mention a mere newcomer, even the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions would tremble in front of him. But this Lin Yi could recover in such a short time. He was really a heroic youth. Shanghai Tianhua had always had a unique eye for people. Simple words and actions were enough to see a person's background and talent in his eyes. "As far as this old man knows, you are a newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, and Little Lon has never been to the Welcome Pavilion. There shouldn't be any interaction between the two of you. How did you get to know her?" Shanghai Tianhua didn't directly ask about Shangwan Laner's disappearance. Instead, he asked in a casual tone, without the air of a high and mighty pavilion master. Was he testing me to see if I had any intentions? Lin Yi didn't relax in the slightest. He immediately replied, truthfully, "The first time I met little senior sister was actually because of the little curly bear. It sneaked out and happened to be met by this disciple. At that time, I didn't know why it was injured. In the end, little senior sister misunderstood that this disciple kidnapped it. Little honor is simple. No matter what she does, she takes it for granted. Little white is her heart, so it's normal for you to be misunderstood by her. Because of Little White, this old man has been misunderstood and blamed by her. Shanghai Tianhua laughed heartily. Even in this gloomy and cold dungeon where no daylight could be seen, sitting next to him still felt like a spring breeze caressing one's face. It made one unconsciously trust and feel close to him. Could this be the legendary personal charm? Lin, he was secretly shocked. With the growth of his strength and vision, he now gradually looked at people differently from before. In the past, he looked at external strength, but now he paid more attention to internal strength. A truly powerful person must be able to intimidate the common people from the inside out. This point could be confirmed by many great figures. The pavilion master of Soaring Sky, pavilion in front of him, was a clear proof. Last time, during the birthday banquet, Little Lan said that Su Lingchong had ill intentions towards her, but in the end his manhood was cut off by Little Bai in a drunken frenzy state. You should have played a part in that, right? Shangwan Tianhua asked meaningfully. As a grandfather, he didn't ask Shangwan Laner about this matter from beginning to end. The information he knew was limited to the confession that Shangwan Laner said in the law enforcement hall. However, these matters, even if he didn't openly ask, he could still easily deduce. After all, at that time, when Lin Yi followed Shangwan Laner upstairs, this was something that many people saw. Lin Yi didn't deny it. He nodded and said, "That's right. At that time, the situation was urgent and I couldn't care too much. I could only choose to attack Su Lingchong. Fortunately, he didn't succeed. With your strength, it's really hard for you to be able to restrain Su Lingchong, who is at the great perfection of Foundation establishment." Shanghai Tianhua smiled and suddenly asked, "Then, do you like Little Lan?" "Huh?" Lin Yi was immediately stunned. To suddenly ask such an abrupt question, and the other party was the dignified pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion. No matter how he thought about it, this situation was a little strange. After a moment, under the gaze of Shanghai Tianhua, Lin Yi answered truthfully, "About this, I do indeed have a slight feeling. But before I came to Heaven Stage Island, I already had a girlfriend. Moreover, more than one." When faced with this answer, Lin Yi originally thought that the pavilion master would burst into a rage. After all, Shanghai Laner was the pavilion master's beloved daughter. Just based on their identities, they were already completely incompatible. Not to mention that he had so many confidants. If it was any other parent, they would probably ask him to stay away from his granddaughter. Chapter 4043. Don't be fooled by Shanghai Tianhua's gentle appearance at the moment. According to Murong Zhen's report, Lin Yi was currently a serious suspect in the kidnapping of Shanghai Laner. If there was no solid evidence, no matter how highly Shanghai Tianhua regarded Lin Yi, it was impossible for him to easily let go of this newcomer who was suspected of kidnapping his only granddaughter. There was only one thing that Shanghai Tianhua was most concerned about, and that was how to find his precious granddaughter. This was the reason why he condescended to see Lin Yi. Otherwise, as the dignified soaring pavilion master, it was impossible for him to appear in such a place. Actually, Disciple already knows where little senior's sister is. Lin Yi said slowly. "Oh." Shangwan Tianhua was startled. No matter what method Lin Yi used to prove his innocence, it wouldn't be surprising at all. The fact that he knew Shangwan Lan, Er's location, was rather surprising. If Pavilion Master Shangwan doesn't mind, Disciple can lead the way, but you have to let me out first, Lin Yi said with a burning gaze. Shanghai Tianhua took a deep look at Lin Yi and nodded. "Well, this old man will do as you wish." If it was someone else, even if it was Su Yuanzheng, a big shot in the Elders Guild, he would not dare to pat his chest and say that he could easily take Lin Yi out of here. After all, this was Ram Jie's territory. Without Ram Jie's approval, no one could take anyone away. However, Shangwan Tianhua was not one of them. Not only was he the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he was also the one who had helped and guided Gong Yangjie. If there was anyone in the three great pavilions who could intimidate Gong Yangjie, Shangwan Tianhua would definitely be at the top of the list. Sure enough, with a simple order from Shanghai Tianhua, Ram Jie did not have any objections and directly nodded to do as he was told. From being locked in the dungeon, it had only been a short 2 hours since he saw the light of day again, but Lin Yi felt as if a lifetime had passed. If it weren't for Shanghai Tianhua, and if Ram Jie hadn't ignored him from the beginning to the end, he would have been exhausted to death in the dark dungeon that was isolated from the world. That was not an impossibility. Fortunately, he finally came out. Lin Yi stretched himself. It hasn't been too long. Hopefully, Shanghai Laner is still alive and well. How do we go? Shangwan Tianhua asked from behind. Even with his calmness as the top boss of the 3 great pavilions, in the face of his precious granddaughter's safety, he had to be calm. He could not help but feel a little worried. He looked around before his gaze fell on a flying spirit beast from the law enforcement hall in the distance. He pursed his lips and said, "That place is a little far. We needed to give us a ride." "Okay." Shangwan Tianhua immediately led Lin Yi, and the two of them stepped on the flying spirit beast. Without saying a word, they soared into the sky, leaving the law enforcement hall experts looking at each other. Lin Yi was an important suspect, and without the protection of the enforcement hall's experts, he was taken away by Shangwan Tianhua just like that. That was clearly illogical. However, the other party was the master of the soaring pavilion, and if he wanted to do something, even the hall master Gong Yangjie had no choice but to obey. If they, the underlings, were to point fingers or even want to intervene, they would simply be courting death. However, the one who was in trouble was Shanghai Laner. Speaking of which, it was also Shanghai Tianhua's family affairs. Although he was suspected of exceeding his authority by doing so, he could not be blamed. While the law enforcement hall experts watched the two of them leave, this scene also fell into the eyes of Morongjun. As an important informant and witness, she still remained in the law enforcement hall to assist in the investigation. It was just that she was not strictly restricted. Morongjun was suddenly shocked. She did not know why Shanghai Tianhua took Lin Yi out alone. However, judging from the direction of the flying spirit beast, it was clearly going straight to the dilapidated martial arts practice field, where she and Kong Ming kidnapped Shanghai Laner. There was no time to think about the reason. Morongjun hurriedly left the law enforcement hall secretly, ran to a secluded place, and sent a message by Eagle to Kong Ming, who was far away on the other side of the North Island. Shanghai Tianhua is suspected to be able to sense Shanghai Laner's location. He has come here with Lin Yi by flying spirit beast. Let's go. Looking at the scribbled note in his hand, Kong Ming was so scared that he almost had a heart attack. Cha Wu, who was beside him, was so scared that his face turned pale. They kidnapped Shanghai Laner as a follow-up action of the previous rumor. They just wanted to frame Lin Yi. However, they never thought that Shanghai Tianhua, the master of Rising Sky Pavilion, would come in person. With their insignificant strength, they could not even face Lin Yi, let alone Shanghai Tianhua, a top boss with great magic power. If they were really targeted by him, they would not even know how they died. The speed of a messenger eagle is not much faster than that of the flying spirit beast. Deacon Kong, we'd better run for our lives. Otherwise, we'll be doomed. Cha Wu hurriedly advised. The fear in Kong Xiaoming's heart wasn't much better than Cha Wu's. Although he didn't want his meticulously planned kidnapping plan to fail just like that, his life was more important. Shangwan Tianhua and Lin Yi would arrive at the scene in the next moment, and that would be the end of him. Wait, even if we want to run, we can't just run like this. According to what I'm going to say, you should go to Shanghai Laner quickly and shout like this, and then run, Kong Ming suddenly said. At this point, he absolutely did not dare to take Shanghai Laner away. What if Morongjun was right and the other party could sense Shanghai Laner's location? However, Kong Ming still had some tricks up his sleeve. Even if he couldn't take Shanghai Laner away, he could still shout a few words to confuse them. Although Cha Wu was extremely reluctant, he did not dare to argue with Kong Ming at this time. The more he delayed, the more dangerous it would be. He could only bite the bullet and do as he was told. Cha Wu hurriedly ran to the broken martial arts field. He suppressed the fear in his heart and said to Miss Shanghai Laner in a low voice, "Miss Shangguan, the boss said that he kidnapped you this time to show a hero saving the beauty. So later, he will come to save you personally so that he can show off in front of your grandfather. Don't be fooled by him. This is all directed by him." Shanghai Laner raised her eyelids, and her long eyelashes suddenly blinked twice. She said, "What do you mean? I don't understand." "It means that Boss Lin Yi will come to save you later. But in fact, he is pretending. He wants to show a hero saving the beauty." Cha Wu explained helplessly. "Save me? Then why is he pretending?" Shanghai Laner asked curiously. Cha Wu was going crazy at this moment. Time was running out, and this lady's brain seemed to be not bright enough to understand him. He could only shout, "Anyway, you just need to remember that Lin Yi is a liar." Chapter 4044. Cha Wu left helplessly. He didn't know if Shanghai Laner really understood what he said. Anyway, after meeting with Kong Ming Ming, the two of them could no longer care about anything else and immediately fled in embarrassment. Not long after the two of them escaped, Shanghai Tianhua and Lin immediately descended from the sky. If Kong Ming Ming dilly-dallied any longer, they would really not be able to escape. With Shanghai Tianhua's powerful perception, he had already locked the position of his precious granddaughter in the sky. The two of them went straight into the broken martial arts arena. When Shanghai Laner saw this, she immediately said happily, "Grandpa, junior brother, you finally came to save me." Although she was kidnapped this time, she did not suffer any substantial pain from beginning to end. She could also see that these kidnappers had ulterior motives and did not dare to really hurt her. But after all, she was in a crisis. Especially at the beginning, she was still quite frightened. Otherwise, Lin Yi would not have been able to sense her position through the mother-child necklace. Seeing that Shanghai Laner was not injured, Shanghai Tianhua's originally hanging heart finally fell to the ground. He turned to Lin Yi and asked curiously, "How do you know Lan Er's position?" Looking at the three pavilions of the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua's strength could be said to be at the peak, and the exploration range of his divine awareness was also extremely wide. But Shanghai Laner was kidnapped so far away that even he could not lock her position. On the other side, Lin Yi untied the rope made of sea beast tendons on Shanghai Laner's body. He smiled slightly and said, "I happened to cast 2 mother-child necklaces a few days ago, and one of them was given to senior sister apprentice. When there is a crisis, there will be a genuine chi fluctuation, so I know." When Shanghai Tianhua heard this, he was amazed and said, "I have heard that you are an alchemist before, but I didn't expect that you are also a blacksmith. As a newcomer, you could be so versatile. You are a rare genius in the 3 pavilions." Pavilion Master Shangguan is overpraising me. I only know a little about this. Lin Yi smiled reservedly. "You're neither arrogant nor rash. That's rare. Blacksmiths are rarely seen in our soaring sky pavilion. To be able to forge such a mystical necklace is even rarer." Shangguan Tianhua nodded approvingly, and then suddenly asked with a playful expression, "But I heard that this mother-child necklace has always been a gift between lovers. Why did you give it to little Lan Er?" This, Lin Yi was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. If he said that he didn't have any thoughts towards this senior sister of his, then he was clearly deceiving himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given her a mother-child necklace. However, if one were to say that he was really interested in Shangguan Laner, that was not entirely the case. It was just that he had a good impression of her in his heart, and they had a good friendship. At this time, Shangguan Laner stood up and hugged Shangguan Tianhua's arm and said, Grandpa, little junior brother, and I have a deep sibling relationship. It's much closer than lovers. We're friends of life and death." When Shangguan Tianhua heard this, he immediately laughed heartily. He laughed heartily. "Haha, good." However, while laughing, Shangguan Tianhua clearly looked at Lin Yi with a deep meaning. Some words. He just didn't say it out loud. Seeing this, Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Looking at the expression of this pavilion master Shangguan, it seemed that he had been misunderstood. However, this kind of thing couldn't be explained face to face. Maybe he would think that the explanation was a cover-up, and it would become more and more chaotic, so he could only remain silent. Little Lon, did you see the appearance of those robbers who kidnapped you? Shangwan Tianhua asked. Shangwan Laner shook her head. No, they were all in black, and their faces were covered tightly. I couldn't see what they looked like at all. Although she said so, she could still guess the identity of the other party from the previous strange words and deeds of these people. But she didn't want to tell Shangwan Tianhua. After all, there would be no suspense, and it would not be fun at all. Well, it seems that the follow-up arrest can only be handed over to the law enforcement hall. However, little Lon, you have to remember, you can't run around like this in the future, okay? This time, fortunately, Lin Yi brought me here in time, and nothing serious happened. Next time, you won't be so lucky. Shangwan Tianhua reprimanded with a straight face. I know. This time, if it weren't for Little White running out to steal wine to drink, I wouldn't have been so easily kidnapped by them. Shangwan Laner pouted. When she said this, the loud snoring of the little curly bear came from the corner. The three of them were stunned for a moment, and then they laughed at the same time. After making a fuss for a long time, it turned out that the little curly bear, the Fuse, was still drunk and sleeping. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know about the kidnapping at all. When he woke up, everything was over. It was really a dumb bear's dumb luck. Facing this little fellow, they really didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. Shangwan Tianhua shook his head helplessly. Seeing that there was no one around, it was meaningless to continue to stay here. He immediately called Lin Yi and Shangwan Laner to board the flying spiritual beast and set off to return to the three major pavilions. The return of Shangwan Tianhua and the other two immediately caused a sensation in the law enforcement hall. Since Shangwan Laner had returned unscathed and could testify that Lin Yi wasn't the culprit who kidnapped her, the suspicion on Lin Yi was naturally cleared. There was no need for him to return to that dark and gloomy dungeon. On the contrary, Murong Zhen, the person who came forward to report him, was going to get into big trouble this time. Framing Lin Yi was only a small matter, but providing false information to mislead the law enforcement hall was the real problem. If they really wanted to investigate, even if Murong Zhen didn't die this time, she would at least lose a layer of skin. She went for wool and came home shorn. No matter how she tried to exonerate herself with flowery words, she was going to be the scapegoat anyway. Of course, investigating Murong Zhen was the law enforcement hall's business. It had nothing to do with Lin Yi. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only do it in private. It was purely a personal grudge. As for reporting to the law enforcement hall, he had no interest in that. Firstly, there was no evidence. Secondly, Lin didn't want to be too close to the people of the law enforcement hall. He followed Shanghai Tianhua out of the law enforcement hall. Before they parted, Shanghai Tianhua suddenly stopped and turned to Lin Yi. He said, "This time, I owe you another favor. In the future, if you need anything, you can come to the Soaring Sky Pavilion directly to find me." After that, Shanghai Tianhua took the reluctant Shangwan Laner and the little curly bear and quickly disappeared from sight, leaving Lin Yi alone in a daze. In the three great pavilions of the northern island, Shangwan Tianhua's favor was a priceless treasure that no amount of spiritual jade could buy. If it were anyone else who had heard his promise, they would have been so excited that they would have forgotten themselves. Chapter 40-45. Does she really think highly of me? Or is she hinting to me that this thing is just treated as a favor and not to think too much so that I can keep a distance from Shangwan Laner in the future? No one could give Lin Yi an answer to this question. He could only suppress it in his heart for the time being and leave it to the future to prove it. At present, there was only one thing that needed his attention most, and that was the casting plan that was already on the bow. On the other hand, after the kidnapping incident, Shanghai Laner was directly grounded after being taken home by Shanghai Tianhua, and even the little curly bear was strictly ordered not to step out of the house. 2, 3, W, X with this lesson. No matter how hard Shanghai Laner racked her brains, she couldn't find an excuse to go out in a short time. However, what made Shanghai Tianhua quite helpless was that even if she was locked up at home, she couldn't expect Shanghai Laner to concentrate on her cultivation. In addition to playing with the little curly bear, she also had to take time to write letters to her best friend outside the North Island. She was very busy. Her best friend was the daughter of the owner of West Island, Ning Xiu Fa. Birds of a feather flock together. Except for an extremely special case like Lin Yi, with Shanghai Laner's family background. Even if she didn't have the temper and airs of a rich lady, ordinary people were destined not to be her close friends. They were at different levels, and they couldn't talk to each other as equals. Naturally, there was no pure friendship. And in the whole 3 pavilions of North Island, there were very few people whose family background could be compared with that of Shanghai Laner. If the target was further locked on girls of the same age, it would be even more difficult to find them. Therefore, almost all of Shanghai Laner's best friends were on the outer island, and Ning Xiuefei was the closest one among them. Different from North Island, West Island was not only a gathering place for female cultivators, but it still retained the legacy of the ancient matriarchal clan, and everything was decided by women. However, these female cultivators were very powerful, and they were not any weaker than the forces of the other sub-islands. Ning Xiuefei's mother was the island lord of West Island. In the 5 great islands of heaven rank, powerhouses came forth in large numbers, and experts were as numerous as the clouds. Being able to become the master of an island, even if it wasn't the middle island, meant that she was one of the few experts of the 5 great islands of heaven rank. Moreover, she was a woman, yet she was able to become an overlord. The difficulty of this could be imagined. In the ancient secular world, this island master of West Island was comparable to the Empress Wu Zetian, a legendary existence revered by countless people. Strictly speaking, Ning Xiuefei's background was even more powerful than Shanghai Laner's. Of course, the main reason why the two of them could become best friends was that their personalities were compatible. As for his family background, they didn't care about it at all. A while ago, Ning Xiuefei wrote a letter saying that she was going to the far North Island to attend the auction. Shanghai Laner thought that she would come to the North Island to play with her. However, her best friend didn't come, and she always felt regretful. This time, in reply to Ning Xiuefei's letter, Shanghai Laner told her all the depressing things that had happened to her recently, from the birthday party to the kidnapping this time. She said all of them in one go. Anyway, she was grounded at home and had nothing to do, so she simply shared them with her best friend. It was really hard for her, a young lady who claimed that she couldn't write. After a whole day of writing, she wrote a lot of papers and finally roughly said all these things. She sent them out unwillingly. A few days later, Shanghai Laner received Ning Xiuefei's reply, and the content of the letter made her jump with joy. In the letter, Ning Xiuefei said that she had gotten her mother's permission to come to the North Island to play with her. Like Shanghai Laner, Ning Xiuefei had very few best friends. Now, after hearing all the things that had happened to Shanghai Laner as her best friend, she naturally had to come and comfort her. As for the research of the automatic casting mechanism, naturally, her other best friend, Han Jingjing, would take over. Because she was grounded at home by her grandfather, Shanghai Laner was now depressed. But now, her mood was finally lifted again. Middle Island, Alchemy Hall. Recently, there were 2 things that attracted the most attention in Alchemy Hall. One was the death of Zheng Tianjia, and the other was the Minghan between Tian Chan and Zheng Tianjia. She was at the age of a flower and wearing a charming bride's dress. Every girl who loved to dream would think of such a scene many times. Even a cultivator who was infinitely close to becoming an extraordinary immortal would probably have the same thought at this time. They would only envy the Mandarin ducks, not the immortals. However, what if the mister right in front of her was a cold corpse? With the contrast of Zheng Tianjia's cold corpse, the more beautiful Tian Chan was, the more pitiful she looked in the eyes of others. Even those who did not have much of a relationship with her could not help but sigh for her. If it were any other girl, no matter how bad the other party was, people would at most say that it was a flower stuck in a pile of cow dung. But Tian Chan, the Mr. Right, was not even comparable to a pile of cow dung in the eyes of ordinary people. However, this was only the opinion of others. Tian-chan was very satisfied with this. Although the Minghan with a dead person sounded very horrifying, as Zheng Tianji's widow, Tian-chan had a lot of benefits. Not only would there not be anyone who did not have eyes to harass her, but her status in the alchemy hall would also rise. Without so many complicated cultivation tasks and the need to participate in the alchemy hall's routine cultivation, compared to before the Minghan, Tian-chan's life was much more peaceful. Deep in the core of the alchemy hall, there was an extremely special room. Inside lived a strange patient. Originally, with Tian-chan's identity as a normal disciple, she naturally could not enter easily. But now, whenever she was free, she would come to visit this person. "Grandfather, how are you feeling today?" Tian-chan appeared at the door of the room again and greeted respectfully with a smile. A slightly hoarse voice quickly came from inside the room. "I'm not your grandfather. I have no relationship with the Tian family in the secular world. You do not have to purposely curry favor with me. I am now a cripple. No matter how much you try to curry favor with me, it is useless. Zheng Dongjue will not listen to me. If you want me to help you break off the engagement, you better give up." Tian-chan smiled slightly and said, "Grandfather, no matter what, you are Chan-er's elder. Don't talk about elder. I'm not your elder. It is hard to say whose seniority is between the two of us. Who knows, you might even be my sister," the hoarse voice said impatiently. Chapter 4046. This person was actually the once famous Vice Island Master of Heavenly Stage Island. He was the legendary figure who had gone mad because he had cultivated the creation battle art. His meridians had been severed, and he was Tian Xing. Tracing back to their ancestry, the Will of Heaven and Tian-chan were actually from the same lineage, but 1,000 years ago, the Will of Heaven had used a special method to move to Heaven-class Island by chance. However, they had always lived in a practitioner's tribe, and there had never been any outstanding practitioners in their family. The lifespan of the tribesmen was similar to that of ordinary people, so it was hard to calculate the seniority. According to what the Will of Heaven said, perhaps Tian-chan's seniority might really be higher than his, but with his age, it was natural for Tian-chan to call him senior. The Will of Heaven had a close personal relationship with Zhang Liju, and after he went insane, he had been recuperating in the Elixir Hall, but it didn't have much effect. The meridians in his body had long been broken into hundreds and thousands of pieces, and it was already a miracle that he was still alive. If he wanted to reconnect them, even with Zhang Liju's miraculous medical skills, he wouldn't be able to do it. "I'm not the Vice Island Master. Do you think a lunatic like me would believe me if I said I was the Vice Island Master? You don't have to think about climbing up to the rich and powerful, and don't try to climb up to me, your relative. It's useless anyway. It's not as prestigious as Zheng Dongjue's granddaughter-in-law. All right, leave the medicine there. You can leave." As usual, the Will of Heaven didn't open the door and directly asked him to leave. The Will of Heaven used to be the Vice Island Master of Heaven-class Island, a pinnacle figure who looked down on all living beings, but that was all in the past. Now, he was just a cripple who couldn't even take care of himself. With his strange and crazy temper, no one was willing to serve him, and they didn't even bother to look at him. But Tian-chan didn't show any displeasure and shook her head helplessly. Placing the medicine at the door, she respectfully bowed and said, "All right, Chana will come visit Senior in a few days. Chana, it will take her leave first." In the room, the disheveled Will of Heaven had a strange and helpless look in his turbid eyes when he heard this. No matter how crazy he was, a person's heart was still made of flesh and blood, especially when he was in his most miserable and dejected state. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Whether Tian-chan treated him sincerely or not, could he really not see it at all? What was the use of seeing through him? He was just a cripple with broken meridians. If he was thrown on the street, he wouldn't even be as good as a beggar. What could he do? The room was silent for a long time. Suddenly, the crazy laughter of the Will of Heaven rang out again. Coming out of the room of the Will of Heaven, Tian-chan couldn't help but feel a bit worried. She came to the Heavenly Island and was able to see her blood-related elders. This was such a blessing but the current state of the will of heaven really made her unable to feel happy. She hadn't walked 2 steps when a young man in white suddenly walked over from the corridor. After seeing Tian-chan, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he greeted with a smile. "Sister-in-law, you want to see Elder Heaven again?" Seeing this person, Tian-chan's eyes turned cold. A trace of disgust flashed across her face as she replied coldly, "Yes." This young man in white was called Zheng Tianchu. He was Zheng Tianji's cousin. In terms of status, Tian-chan still had to call him brother-in-law. Zheng Tianjia, who had high hopes on him, died tragically halfway. There were rumors in the streets that Zheng Dongjue had already begun to shift his attention to Zheng Tianchu. He intended to train him to replace Zheng Tianjia's original position and become the person in charge of the Zheng family in the future. In terms of strength, Zheng Tianchu and Zheng Tianjia couldn't be compared at all. Although he had the halo of Zheng Dongjue's grandson, the entire Pill Hall didn't take him seriously. He could only be regarded as a small character on the edge. But now it was different. Zheng Tianchu had become Zheng Dongjue's favorite person. He immediately began to act arrogantly. Now it could be said that he was in the limelight and had the posture of becoming Zheng Tianjia's second. However, all this had nothing to do with Tian-chan. She hated the Zheng family from the bottom of her heart and didn't even want to say a word more. "Elder Heaven must have given you face again, right? Sister-in-law, your character is too virtuous. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be willing to serve a crazy old man like this. Why do you want to get angry for no reason? Why don't I accompany you the next time sister-in-law goes?" Zheng Tianchu continued to say with a smile. Tian-chan looked at him indifferently and said, "No need. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first." After saying that, Tian-chan didn't want to bother with him anymore. She directly bypassed Zheng Tianchu and left without looking back. Looking at Tian-chan's beautiful and graceful back, Zheng Tianchu couldn't help but have a trace of lust in his eyes. He pinched his chin with one hand and sneered, "Still pretending to be a chaste woman in front of me? Well, the more character a woman has, the more interesting it will be to play with her in the future. There's nothing more delicious than dumplings, and nothing more fun than, hey, sister-in-law." With Tian-chan's current status as a widow, she was already a cooked duck in Zheng Tianchu's eyes. She couldn't escape from his palm at all. As long as he sat firmly in the position of the Zheng family's young master, this beautiful sister-in-law would surrender to him sooner or later. Thinking of the beauty, Zheng Tianchu couldn't help laughing. He couldn't help but praise his cousin Zheng Tianjia in his heart. It was really a good time to die. Law Enforcement Hall, North Island. Shanghai Laner came back unscathed. This time, the crisis, which was obviously aimed at Lin Yi, was solved without any attack. On the contrary, Murong Zhen, the informant, was now in huge trouble. There were risks when she came forward rashly. When Kong Mingming asked her to report Lin Yi, she had already had this bad feeling. But at that time, Shanghai Laner didn't cooperate in every way, and Kong Mingming obviously didn't want to show up. Cha Wu, a fence-sitter, was not reliable at all. She was purely forced to bite the bullet and do it in person. Now, she failed to frame Lin Yi and was hurt. The bad feeling became a reality. Lin Yi went out with Shanghai Tianhua in a carefree and easy way. Murong Zhen, the informant, became a prisoner, locked in a dirty and smelly dungeon, with no one to answer her calls. Murong Zhen couldn't help but tremble with fear when she thought of the cruel methods of the law enforcement hall. She had a guilty conscience, and she was a woman. No matter how treacherous and ruthless she was on the outside, once she was in this underground prison where she couldn't see the light of day, it wouldn't be strange if she was scared to the point of becoming a lunatic after a long period of time. Chapter 4047. With the existence of the soul-searching skill, line to the law enforcement hall was simply courting death. Murong Zhen's heart sank to the bottom the moment she was captured by the powerhouses of the law enforcement hall and locked in the dungeon. She knew that she was done for this time. Even if she had the slightest bit of luck, it would only be wishful thinking. It was a matter of great importance. Although Shang Wanlan, Had been rescued safely. It was a terrible thing to kidnap the first young lady of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. The law enforcement hall would definitely investigate this matter to the end, and she, the suspicious informant, was a ready-made breakthrough. Finally, amidst her extreme anxiety and panic, the tragic fate that Murong-jun had been waiting for finally arrived. The people from the law enforcement hall had come to interrogate her. Even though Murong-jun had already prepared his words in his head, he was not confident that his words would be able to fool the people from the law enforcement hall. She silently followed the people from the law enforcement hall all the way. With every step she took, Murong-jun felt that she was one step closer to death. The despair brought about by this kind of dead end directly crushed her last bit of nerves. She suddenly squatted on the ground and began to wail loudly. The other prisoners in the dungeons around them all looked at each other excitedly, and frivolous whistles could be heard continuously. The law enforcement hall's experts were stunned. They looked at each other and turned to look at her. They scolded, "If you want to cry, cry outside. The dungeon is not a place for you to make a scene." Outside, Murong-jun stopped crying. She looked up at the law enforcement hall's experts with tears in her eyes. "Don't you want to interrogate me?" The two law enforcement hall's experts laughed. "According to the rules, we were supposed to interrogate you. However, Hall leader Gong Yang told us not to make things difficult for the informant. Otherwise, who would dare to provide clues for the law enforcement hall in the future? Therefore, we're not going to interrogate you now. We're going to let you out." Really? Murong-jun was overjoyed. She had been in despair, but now she had a new lease of life. She was so happy that her head was dizzy. "Of course it's true. Do you think the law enforcement hall is so free that we have so much time to play with you? Are you done crying? If you're done crying, get up." The law enforcement hall's experts were speechless. At the same time, they shouted at the top of their lungs to calm down the other prisoners in the dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that Murong-jun was a beautiful woman, he would not have been able to do anything to her. He had already impatiently sent a kick over. Yes, this little girl will get up now." After making such a blunder, Murong-jun's face couldn't help but blush in embarrassment. However, she was secretly puzzled in her heart. When did Gong Yangjie become so generous? For so many years, the law enforcement hall under the command of Ram Jia had always been known for its coldness and brutality. Those who were caught and brought here, even if they were innocent, would at least lose half of their lives. The number of people who had died in the law enforcement hall in the past 10 years was more than the number of people who had died in the previous 100 years. Logically speaking, there seemed to be nothing wrong with what he said just now, but it really didn't seem like Ram Jia's style. Moreover, he knew his own business. Now that the person involved, Shangwan Laner, had returned, Murong-jun's so-called report was simply full of doubts. Could Ram Jia really not see through it all? She was completely bewildered. After Murong-jun came out of the law enforcement hall, she went straight back to the welcome pavilion. Kong Ming had already been waiting for her in her wooden house. "Miss Murong, that's great. You're finally back." Seeing that she came back safe and sound, Kong Ming immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing that Kong Ming cared about her so much, Murong-jun couldn't help but feel touched. Previously, because he forced her to take the risk to go to the law enforcement hall to report Lin, her resentment also dissipated a lot. But Murong-jun was also a scheming woman after all. Just by glancing at Kong Ming's happy expression, she quickly realized that this guy showed up here not because he cared about her at all. The reason why Kong Ming stayed here was that he wanted to know Murong-jun's fate as soon as possible, so that he could judge whether he should stay or leave. The reason why Kong Ming stayed here was that he wanted to know Murong-jun's fate as soon as possible, so that he could decide whether he should stay or leave. Seeing that Murong-jun's expression was cold, Kong Ming choked and continued to smile. "I heard that Miss Murong was locked up in the law enforcement hall's dungeon. I was so worried. Now that I see that you're safe and sound, I can finally be at ease." Deacon Kong has to be on tenterhooks. This beauty is truly flattered. However, it is all thanks to Hall Leader Gong Yang that I was able to leave the law enforcement hall unscathed this time. If it wasn't for him speaking up for me, we would have been completely wiped out this time. Murong-jun suppressed the resentment in her heart and pretended to be mysterious as she said this to keep everyone in suspense. As expected, Kong Ming-ming's eyelids twitched when he heard that. He quickly asked, "All thanks to Hall Leader Ram? Ram, Jia speaking up for you? What's your relationship with him?" Even a young master like Su Lingchong would find it hard to speak up for a powerful and overbearing person like Ram Jia. How could he stand up for a mere Murong-jun? Who knows? As the saying goes, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. After all, the three great pavilions have more men than women. No matter how powerful and overbearing Hall Leader Ram Jia is, he's still a man full of vigor. "Officer Kong, what do you think?" Murong-jun deliberately gave him a coquettish look. She knew that it was pure wishful thinking for her to hook up with a person like Ram Jia with her beauty alone. However, she used the tiger's skin to play up the tiger's flag. By vaguely exaggerating her relationship with Ram Jia, she wouldn't offend anyone. At the same time, she could also use it to deter Kong Ming-ming. She wouldn't have to be the scapegoat if something happened to him in the future. I guess so. Kong Ming-ming was a little uncertain now. All men were lustful. He was a clear proof. If Ram Jia really liked Murong-jun, then he would have to reconsider his attitude towards Murong-jun in the future. What should we do now? The kidnapping incident hasn't passed yet. If we want to deal with Lin Yi, it won't be easy, Kong Ming-ming said half helplessly and half tentatively. Murong-jun glanced at him and shrugged. She backed off and said, "Don't look at me. I have no other choice now. If I continue to commit crimes against the public, it'll be too risky. I can't bear it. But if we just let Lin Yi do whatever he wants, would you be able to take it lying down, Miss Morong?" Kong Xiaoming wasn't willing to give up. "Even if I can't swallow it, what else can I do?" Murong-jun was also unwillingly. However, since things had developed to this point, she was already helpless against Lin Yi, who was getting stronger day by day. Suddenly, Murong-jun's eyes brightened. She suggested, 3 is better than 2. Why don't we ask Meng Tong to come and discuss it?" Chapter 40-48. If it had been the previous idiot Meng Tong, the two of them wouldn't have paid any attention to him. However, after eating the Meridian Heart-shattering pill, Meng Tong's strength had skyrocketed and his temperament had changed greatly. Especially since Meng Jueguang's sudden death, he had been in a state of seclusion and had become somewhat unfathomable. Maybe he would be a good help. Meng Tong and Lin Yi's grudge was as deep as theirs. They were natural allies, and there was no doubt that he was reliable. However, Meng Tong, whose temperament had become even weirder, only scolded them coldly after listening to their conversation. Idiots! Murong-jun and Kong Ming-ming could no longer hold back their disdain. They had always thought that their status was far above Meng Tong's, but now they were being looked down upon by someone who used to be a nobody. It was intolerable. However, just as their expressions changed, they immediately felt a violent and ferocious aura pressing down on top of their heads, causing them to be a little breathless. "Ew, you're already in the middle stage of the foundation building realm?" Kong Ming-ming and Murong-jun were shocked at the same time. They never thought that in such a short time, Meng Tong would be reborn and break through to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. When Murong-jun first came to the Welcome Pavilion, her strength was at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm. She was the only one who stood out. Someone like Meng Tong was nothing in her eyes. However, in just a few months, he had become a middle-stage foundation-building realm powerhouse that she had to look up to. Strength determined the right to speak. If Meng Tong was still at the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm, Murong-jun and Kong Ming-ming would have fallen out with him right away because of his disdain. However, he was now a middle-stage foundation-building realm powerhouse. His strength was completely above the two of them. That was a completely different story. Even if Murong-jun and Kong Ming-ming were unhappy, they could only endure it for now. Meng Tong ignored the two's shock and continued to say disdainfully, "With your meager strength, you can't even defeat me." How dare they kidnap Shangwan Laner and frame Lenny? It was truly a miracle that they were able to survive until now unscathed. Yet, they still had the face to wonder how they could find them. Even Shangwan Tianhua has personally come out. Is it strange that such a powerful person has a way to find you? A series of merciless disdain and criticism. Both Murong Jun and Kong Xiaoming's faces turned red, and they were speechless. Looking back, they realized that kidnapping Shangwan Laner was really an act of obsession. It was really lucky for them to be able to live until now. Kidnap Shangwan Laner. This idea was proposed by Miss Murong in the beginning. It has nothing to do with me. Kong Ming cleared himself. From the beginning to the end, he only wanted to deal with Lin Yi, unlike Murong Jun, who had a personal grudge against Shanghai Laner. Murong Jun was so embarrassed that he could not speak for a long time. After a long time, he said with a straight face, "Since things have come to this, why are you still talking about these useless things? You have the time to blame each other. It's better to think about how to deal with Lin Yi next." Oomph. Now Su Lingqiong is gone, and so is Meng Jueguang. Our backers are all gone. What else can we do? Meng Tong snorted disdainfully. If it was Meng Tong in the past, he would have jumped out to challenge Lin Yi a long time ago when his strength skyrocketed to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. He probably would not even bother to think about conspiracies. He just wanted to trample on Lin Yi to show off. However, his temperament had changed. He was no longer as stupid and naive as before. Instead, he had learned to endure. But we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. As long as we study him carefully, we can definitely find his weakness. Murong Jun said unwillingly. Kong Ming, you and Lin Yi are old rivals in the secular world. You should know his weakness the best. Meng Tong turned around and asked. His grudge with Lin Yi was real. No matter how his temperament changed, if there was a chance to kill Lin Yi, he would definitely not let it go. Kong Ming thought about it and pondered for a moment. Well, this guy is affectionate and likes to show off. Other than that, there seems to be nothing. Hey, I got it. Meng Tong and Murong Jun were excited at the same time. Say it. Lin Yi and Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion are also rivals in the secular world. I heard that this old J8 lamp is doing well now. I will find him and think of a way together. Kong Ming suggested. Although he had no friendship with Dongfang Badeo, the enemy of the enemy was a friend. Since they were all to deal with Lin Yi, naturally, the more people, the better. Meng Tong nodded and said, "That's good. By the way, also find Zhong Pingliang of Chongtian Pavilion. We can't lose contact with these people just because Su Lingqiong is gone. I think Zhong Pingliang is also a good person." Yes. How could I forget him in this kidnapping? If he was there at the beginning, we wouldn't need to find Chao Wu, this fence-sitter. Kong Ming nodded again and again. In fact, it couldn't be said that he forgot. During this time, Kong Ming had been hanging out with Murong Jun. At the beginning, he didn't call Zhong Pingliang purely because of the man's exclusive mentality. He didn't want Zhong Pingliang to take the opportunity to get too close to Murong Jun, this coquettish woman. But now, he couldn't care about these miscellaneous things. It was more important to deal with Lin Yi. Kong Ming immediately set off to find Dongfang Badeo. He had the identity of a new deacon. Even if Su Lingqiong, this big backer, was gone, he was still relatively popular in the Welcome Pavilion. Everyone had to give him some face. More than half a year had passed. Looking at all the newcomers of the Welcome Pavilion and the 3 pavilions, if you want to list the most famous and most glorious newcomers, Lin Yi was undoubtedly ranked first. Kong Ming was ranked second with the bonus of a new deacon, and the third person was Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion. Although most of the people on Heaven Stage Island looked down upon the cultivator from the secular world, it had been proven that every time a person was transported from the secular world, they might appear to be down and out because they were ostracized, but in the end, they would often become elites and stand above most of the local cultivators on Heaven Stage Island. This was not surprising at all. Everyone who had the opportunity to come to the Heavenly Stage Island was a super elite selected from hundreds of millions of people in the secular world. Even if they couldn't compare with the top group of people on the Heavenly Stage Island, If it was just to compete with the ordinary practitioners on the Heavenly Stage Island, they were absolutely more than enough in terms of strength and shrewdness. If they encountered a little more opportunity, they could easily stand out. Chapter 4049. For a long time, watching Lin Yi's brilliant performance, Dong Fongbadeo said that he was not jealous at all. It was absolutely nonsense. Even in his dreams, he wanted to step on Lin Yi. It was a pity that he was in the mysterious pavilion and had no intersection with Lin Yi of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, and it was difficult to pose any threat to Lin Yi. This feeling of power, but nowhere to use it, could make people crazy. Kong Xiaoming and the others simply couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him because the mysterious pavilion stood them up during the voting for the new deacon. If it wasn't for Su Lingchong and the others losing their backing, they probably wouldn't even remember that such a figure existed until now. In the face of Kong Mingming's visit, Dong Fongbadeo showed great enthusiasm. Especially when he heard that they were going to join forces to deal with Lin Yi. He was extremely enthusiastic and agreed to join the team on the spot. Originally, Dong Fongbadeo also had some intention of taking advantage of his seniority. He thought that after joining the team, he could at least be a person who gave orders. However, when he saw the strength of Meng Tong and Murong Jun, especially Meng Tong, a master in the middle stage of Zhuji realm, he suddenly shriveled. Dong Fongbadeo did not dare to pretend and gave advice to everyone. The old men in our mysterious pavilion are self-contained and have a wide range of contacts. I heard a news related to Lin Yi a few days ago. I don't know if you have heard it. What news? Everyone asked. Lin Yi, that guy, seems to be preparing to cast recently. I heard from the old men in the mysterious pavilion that Lin Yi also followed Hong Zhong of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to the auction in the extreme North Island. It seems that it was to bid for casting materials. I don't know where he got so many spirit jades to be so confident. Dong Fongbadeo pinched his chin. Casting? Kong Mingming's eyes suddenly brightened, and he said excitedly, "Isn't that just right? Let's go and destroy him. Even if we can't kill him, we will disgust him." Hearing this, Meng Tong and Murong Jun also nodded one after another. This idea sounded a bit small, but at the moment, they had no better way. What's more, if they let Lin Yi cast any magic weapon and his strength sword, it was not a good thing for them. It turns out that no wonder Lin Yi has been appearing and disappearing mysteriously during this time. Only then did Murong Jun come to a realization. Then, he said with a slight headache, "But if we're going to destroy it, we'll have to find the place where he forged the weapon first, right? It's like looking for a needle in a haystack with just a few of us. How are we supposed to find it?" Meng Tong thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Kong Mingming, when you kidnapped him, you used a flying spiritual beast." "That's right. I borrowed it from someone I know in the Hall of Alchemy. Although we have flying spiritual beasts in the Welcome Pavilion, there are only a few of them, and it's easy for people to notice." Kong Mingming nodded. "That's good. Continue to think of a way to borrow a flying spiritual beast. When Lin Yi shows up next time, we'll follow him in the sky. No matter how sensitive his senses are, he won't be able to sense us. When that time comes, we just need to follow the clues and find his hiding place." Meng Tong said confidently, "That's right. That's a brilliant idea." Kong Mingming and the rest nodded. With their strength alone, it was too difficult to follow Lin Yi on the ground. However, it would be a different story if they were in the sky. Not only would it be difficult to lose him, but it would also be difficult to find him. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult to be discovered. After the few of them discussed the plan, they began to move. They asked Kong Mingming to borrow a flying spiritual beast. On the other hand, Murong Jun stayed in the wooden house to follow him. As soon as Lin Yi appeared, he would inform Meng Tong and the rest to take action. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't notice any of this at all. His mind was completely focused on the forging process that was about to start. After the King of Junk's repeated delays, everything was ready now. Success or failure depended on this. Before starting, Lin Yi specially returned to the Welcome Pavilion to inform senior brother Ku Pe and the rest. Once the equipment forging started, It could not be stopped halfway. Nobody knew how long it would last. Therefore, it was necessary to inform these people in advance, lest they thought that Lin Yi had gone missing and caused trouble. This gave Kong Ming Ming and the rest, who were scheming, an opportunity. After Lin Yi left, they began to follow him in the sky. Although Lin Yi was cautious along the way, he neglected the flying spiritual beast above him. Even if he raised his head occasionally, he would not think too much about it. Flying spiritual beasts were very common mounts on Heaven Stage Island, and there were often flying spiritual beasts above him. When Kong Ming Ming and the rest were in the sky, they did not have any malicious thoughts about Lin Yi, so the jade pendant would not alert them. What's this guy doing in the forest? Is he going to smith in the forest? He can't be that stupid, right? Kong Ming Ming was confused when he saw Lin Yi running into the forest after leaving the welcome pavilion. They were not blacksmiths, but they knew that the requirement for the stability of the surrounding environment was not lower than that of alchemy. God knew if he would catch fire if he were to smith in the forest. Let's wait and see. Meng Tong and the rest were also confused. After hesitating for a while, they finally decided to stay put and let the flying spiritual beast fly back and forth in the sky, pretending to be busy. After a while, their eyes lit up at the same time. He's out. However, Morong Zhen was stunned. That's not right. This person is not Lin Yi. Look at his face. He looks completely different from Lin Yi. Women were always more attentive. Although they were not very high from the ground, they were still at a high altitude to ensure that Lin Yi would not notice them. Looking down from above, the person was just a peanut. At most, they could determine the person's identity by the position of the body. Very few people would pay attention to the specific appearance like Morong Zhen. However, after she said that, Meng Tong and Kong Ming Ming also realized that something was wrong. Although it was not very obvious, they could still see the difference if they looked carefully. It's really not Lin Yi. Damn it. This forest is so dense that there's not even a place to stand. Normally, there shouldn't be anyone here. Where did this guy come from? I was almost misled by him. If I had followed the wrong person, all my efforts would have been in vain. Meng Tong secretly rejoiced. At that moment, Kong Ming Ming suddenly slapped his thigh and said, Wrong. This guy is Lin Yi. You've all been deceived by him. What do you mean? Meng Tong and Morong Zhen were stunned at the same time. Chapter 4050. That's right. I still remember the last time Southern Sky Gate and Yuja deliberately called Lin Yi out. So that's what happened. If he really wanted to, it's not difficult for us cultivators to change a fake face at the last moment. Morong Zhen also came to a sudden realization. Meng Tong's eyes lit up when he heard that. So this guy is really Lin Yi? That's right, this place is so remote that no one would come here. Besides, forging is a matter of life and death. It's reasonable for him to change a fake identity for concealment. While they were talking, Lin Yi had gone directly to the secret base of the King of Rags. Now his mind was focused on forging, and he didn't notice the abnormality in the sky at all. Seeing that Lin Yi suddenly went into a hidden cave after walking around outside for a long time, Kong Ming Ming and the others were relieved and said excitedly, This is definitely right. This cave should be the place where he forged. Haha, Lin Yi's dead for sure now that we found such a big flaw. Let's wait for a while, wait for him to start forging, then we will sneak attack together. Brother Meng Tong is now a master in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Together with a few of us, I don't believe that he can escape alive with so many people ganging up on him. Kong Ming Ming smiled with a confident face. Meng Tong was not in a hurry. He signaled Kong Ming Ming to let the flying spirit beast land and ordered, Don't rush. This is a rare opportunity. We have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Let's stick to the previous discussion. Morong Zhen and I will watch here first. Kong Ming Ming, you go call Dongfang Badeo and Zhongping Liang here. We have more people in case he escapes again. Okay, I'll go get them now. This time Lin is looking for death, looking for such a narrow cave with no way out. Then we 5 will block the entrance. He won't escape even if he dies. Kong Ming Ming replied with a smile. Kong Ming Ming was about to leave. Morong Zhen suddenly said, We can also inform Yuja and Southern Sky Gate Tell them that Lin Yi is Lin heir. They're not exactly the same kind of people as us, but they're Lin Yi's sworn enemies. Just in case something happens to us, there'll be double insurance. Kong Ming Ming and Meng Tong looked at each other and nodded. Ha. Well said, Lin Yi. Today we will see how you die. They immediately split up. After receiving the news from Kong Ming Ming, Zhong Pingliang suddenly became anxious. From the beginning to the end, he was the one who knew the latest, and these people only came to inform him when he was ready to take action. Now, even if he wanted to remind Lin Yi, there was no time and opportunity. Zhong Pingliang lowered his head, and his face seemed to be uncertain. Kong Ming Ming couldn't help but squint his eyes in doubt. What? You don't want to go? Go. Of course I will go. Such a good opportunity for revenge. How can I not go? Zhong Pingliang suddenly raised his head and said, although he couldn't warn Lin Yi in advance, it was better to go than not to go. At worst, he would expose his identity and counterattack. That's good. You go now and call the old bastard Dongfang Badeo. I will go to the soaring pavilion to greet you, Zhe, and Southern Sky Gate. I will come back immediately to take you there. Kong Ming Ming ordered. He immediately rode the flying spirit beast and flew away. Zhong Pingliang responded, but he couldn't help but worry for Lin Yi. During this time, he didn't have much contact with Lin Yi. He didn't know what Lin Yi's strength was now. But these people who were ready to attack him, the strength of this lineup was not simple. Although Zhong Pingliang had absolute confidence in Lin Yi's strength, it was limited to the premise of one-on-one. After all, Lin Yi was just a newcomer. No matter how strong his strength was, there was a limit. In the midst of anxiety, Kong Ming Ming had gone to the soaring pavilion and returned. He took him and Dongfang Badeo to meet Meng Tong and Murong Zhen. All the people were in place. Let's not delay, let's do it. As the one with the highest strength, Meng Tong naturally took the lead and entered the cave. Murong Zhen and the others followed behind him in a single file. The safer way was to wait for Yu Zhe and Southern Sky Gate. At that time, maybe even a master of the Golden Core stage like Nan Tianba would be there, so it would be safe to deal with Lin Yi. However, after killing people, they usually took the treasures and divided the spoils. After all, they were not on the same side. If they really waited for Nan Tianba, even if there was something good on Lin Yi, they wouldn't have a chance to take it. It was better to hurry up and get rid of Lin Yi before Yu Zhe and the others arrived. Anyway, with their strength, as long as there were no accidents, it was more than enough to deal with Lin Yi alone. Even if they couldn't get rid of him, they still had Southern Sky Gate as a backup. Just as Meng Tong and the others stepped into the cave, the tattered king, who had already begun to forge, suddenly changed his expression. Not good. Someone came in. How did you know? Lin Yi was startled. The cave was long and narrow. Even with his senses, he was unable to sense the situation at the entrance, let alone the tattered king's strength. Brother Lin, you might not know this, but my master didn't dig this cave just to find a place to rest. Not only is the spiritual chi abundant and the environment is stable, making it suitable for forging weapons, he has also set up formations everywhere. As long as you merge your divine sense with the formations, you'll be able to sense the situation in every corner of the cave, explained the tattered king. Lin Yi came to a realization and asked, Who are they? How many are there? There are 5 of them, but I'm not sure who they are. The king of Junk shook his head and said anxiously, This is bad. Now that the forging has begun, it's too late to stop. We can't stop halfway, and we can't be affected in any way. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain, and so many precious materials will be wasted. Don't worry, leave them to me. You just need to focus on forging weapons. Lin Yi immediately stood up, patted the tattered king's shoulder to comfort him, and walked toward the entrance of the cave. He didn't know who had come in this time, but at this moment, the arrow was knocked on the bow. No matter how strong the other party was, he had to find a way to resist. Indeed, there were people coming, and the jade pendant began to warn him. At the same time, Meng Tong and the others who had groped their way into the cave were amazed. Chapter 4051. How did Lin Yi find such a good place? It looks like it's right next to the spirit jade mine. Pay attention to your feet. Maybe you can pick up some spirit jades. Meng Tong and the others were amazed, but they slowed down and became more cautious. This place is obviously not something that Lin Yi could create alone. If there's a hidden master hiding here, wouldn't it be? Zhong Pingliang said, following Kong Mingming's train of thought. Zhong Pingliang's words made everyone's faces change. If there really was a master here, then they would have to think twice. However, Kong Mingming's face turned sinister. Master my ass. If there was a master, he would have come out to support Lin Yi. Why are you still hiding? That makes sense. Morongjin nodded, agreeing. Zhong Pingliang was secretly annoyed that he didn't scare them away. Just when they were feeling suspicious, a voice came from the depths of the cave. I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect it to be you guys. You're really haunting me. Lin Yi, Meng Tong, and the others focused their gazes. Seeing that there was no one behind Lin Yi, they all let out sighs of relief and laughed coldly. Or should we call you Lin Yi II? As expected of the rookie king who loves to show off, you still have the guts to show yourself at a time like this. Tell me, should we say that you're impressed, or should we say that you're stupid? Lin Yi wasn't surprised that someone had come out. Since these people were able to find this place, they'd probably already found out who he was. He smiled. I think it's better for you to say that yourselves. You've been through so much in the past, and you still haven't learned your lesson. How dare you come into a cave to block me? Haha, who gave you guys this much courage, this much boldness? This is my courage. Meng Tong harumphed coldly before he even finished his sentence. Without saying a word, his figure suddenly burst forward. In the next moment, his legs carried the power of wind and lightning that could captivate one's mind. The strength of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was completely revealed. This kick was determined to succeed, and it went straight for Lin Yi's head. Meng Tong had cultivated the thousand legs technique and was originally a speed expert. After taking the Meridian Heart-shattering pill, his entire personality had changed. His speed was much faster than before, and it was so fast that people could not help but feel that it was strange. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. He didn't think that Meng Tong's strength would improve this quickly. Against such a sudden and swift 25 forms of thousand kicks, Meng Tong didn't even have time to react. With his current strength, it would be very difficult for him to avoid it. In this narrow cave, the space left for him to move about was too limited. Since he couldn't dodge, he could only face it head-on. Now that he was forced to make a move, how could he block this overbearing 25 styles of thousand kicks? In a hurry, Lin Yi did not advance, but retreated instead. He clenched one hand into a fist and instantly condensed a fervent and turbulent fist intent. Before the frenzied fire fist was released, the temperature in the entire cave suddenly rose a lot. A suffocating heat wave hit him in the face. Bang! The 25th style of the raging fire fist clashed with the 25th style of the thousand kicks in an instant. The aftermath of the collision of their powerful forces stirred up layers of sand and stones, causing Morongjin and the others behind Meng Tong to be covered in dust. This face-to-face, Meng Tong only felt a slight numbness in his leg, and then he was forcefully shaken back. At the same time, Lin Yi, who was opposite him, also shook under the powerful impact of the 25 styles of thousand kicks. The two of them exchanged blows. No one was able to gain the upper hand, and they were actually evenly matched. It's really powerful, but it's a pity. You're still going to die today? Although he didn't succeed in one blow, Meng Tong was already mentally prepared for this. He immediately followed up with an even more ferocious 26 styles of thousand kicks. At the same time, he shouted to the people behind him, "What are you waiting for? Attack together!" Hearing Meng Tong's shout, Morongjin, who was behind him, hurriedly used a cunning phantom finger to coordinate with Meng Tong's 26 styles of thousand kicks to attack. However, because they were standing in a straight line, Kong Ming and the others behind him could not coordinate with each other. The cave passage was too narrow. If they attacked together, It was very likely that they would accidentally injure Meng Tong and Murong Jun before they hit Lin Yi. Even so, Meng Tong had already made up his mind. In his eyes, Lin Yi's strength was at most in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. It was already very difficult for him to face his 26 styles of 1,000 kicks. It was already very impressive that he could withstand it. On the other hand, Murong Jun's Phantom Finger was not very powerful, but it won from a tricky angle. It was a perfect match for the already powerful 1,000 kicks. As long as it went straight for the vital parts, it would be the straw that broke the camel's back. Lin Yi was not moved. As he quickly gathered an extremely powerful genuine chi in his palms, he sneered disdainfully and said, "You're despicable enough, but you're still too weak. You've all suffered losses in my hands, but you don't learn from your mistakes. You're still so stubborn even when you're about to die." Meng Tong and the others laughed hideously. However, before they could finish laughing, everything came to an abrupt end. Lin Yi suddenly attacked with the 24 styles of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. The genuine chi that poured out of his palms instantly danced like wild snakes. It directly passed through his opponent's 1,000 kicks and Phantom Finger, then turned into a pair of giant palms again. Although it was launched later, it arrived first and hit Meng Tong's chest without any suspense. Puff! Meng Tong spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, like a kite with a broken string, he was sent flying by the palm. Even Murong Jun and Kong Ming Ming, who were behind Meng Tong, were caught off guard. They were all hit by the palm, one after another, and they all fell to the ground, looking very embarrassed. How is this possible? I've been suffering for so long, and I'm already an expert in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. How can I still not defeat this kind of country bumpkin? Meng Tong's face was immediately filled with disbelief. His eyes stared at Lin Yi, who was approaching him step by step, and he could not help but murmur. For such a long time, Meng Tong had to suffer the destruction of the Meridian Heart-shattering pill every day. Being able to quickly improve his strength under such inhuman torture, Meng Tong felt that he had been reborn. He was not an existence that ordinary cultivators like Lin Yi could compare with. It should have been easy for him to defeat Lin Yi at the same level. However, he did not expect the reality to be so cruel. After his strength soared, he was confident that he would win for the first time. He did not even hesitate to ask Murong Jun to cooperate with him to launch a sneak attack. But in the end, he was knocked down by Lin Yi with one move. His ending was almost the same as before. This was too weird and ironic, right? Chapter 4052. After a pause, Lenny glanced at everyone with evil intentions. Speaking of which, have you guys played football before? Why don't we play? Football? Kong Ming Ming and the others' eyelids twitched at the same time. Without waiting for them to react, Lin Yi raised his leg and kicked Meng Tong, mercilessly sending him flying several meters back. Meng Tong, who had lost his soul, didn't even have the strength to make a proper movement to resist. This time, not only was Meng Tong at the front unlucky, but even Murong Jun and the others, who hadn't reacted in time, suffered with him. After one kick, another followed. Lin Yi treated Meng Tong like a football and kicked him out of the cave. Murong Jun, Kong Xiaoming, and the others were in an even worse state. Not only did they have to piss their pants, but they also couldn't escape the fate of being used as a human shield. Although they weren't injured directly, they all had bruises all over their faces. What the fuck, this was football. After being toyed with by Lin Yi, Kong Ming Ming and the others wanted to die. They wanted to fight to the death several times, but Lin Yi controlled the rhythm and didn't give them a chance to stand up. In such a narrow passage, if they were to fall, fighting to the death would be wishful thinking. Among them, only Zhong Pingliang, who was at the back, escaped. Not only did he not suffer because of Lin Yi's intentional care, but he also deliberately blocked the escape route of the people in front of him. Without a trace, Lin Yi wouldn't have the chance to kick them so happily otherwise. After being kicked out of the cave, not only Meng Tong, but also Kong Ming Ming and the others couldn't stand up anymore. Not to mention fighting Lin Yi. Even if they wanted to run, Lin Yi wouldn't give them the chance. Lin, he looked around and said lightly, "In the wilderness, there's no one around. It's a good place to hide a corpse, don't you think?" Kong Xiaoming and the others shivered in fright. They came here with only one goal in mind, to kill Lin Yi. They never thought that with so many of them, they would end up in a situation where Lin Yi could do whatever he wanted. "You, how dare you? Do you know what the crime is for newbies to kill each other?" Kong Ming and the others quickly said. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently and smiled. "I don't know, but no one will find out anyway. Since you came to kill me, I'll kill you instead. There should be nothing to complain about, right? Everyone is an adult. We should be open-minded and reasonable. Don't you think so?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi was about to make his move. They'd been hindering him time and time again, and he really wanted to kill these people, especially with Meng Tong's shocking rate of growth. If he continued to let them live, there would be no end to their troubles. He might as well go all the way. He might as well kill them all. Anyway, there was no one else here. After killing them and burying their bodies, no one would know. Even if the law enforcement hall investigated later, they wouldn't directly find Lin Yi. The risk was not great. One by one. "Let's start with you, Great Deacon Kong." Murderous intent was revealed. Lin Yi walked slowly to Kong Ming, which really scared Kong Ming so much that he almost peed his pants. Dongfang Badeo was also scared. He shouldn't have come. From the beginning to the end, he had to be buried with them. It was really bad luck. Watching Lin Yi's hand coming to his neck, Kong Ming was scared to retreat on the ground. After rolling and crawling away for a few feet, he had an idea and shouted, "Lin Yi, don't be arrogant. We came here to find you. There are other people who know. He is coming. If you dare to kill us, you can't escape punishment yourself. At that time, you will have to be buried with us." After listening to this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He noticed that Zhong Pingliang was also secretly nodding to himself. If no one knew, he could kill them here. But now, if he killed these people, he would have to be buried with them. There was no way. Seeing Lin Yi's murderous intent finally converged, Kong Ming quickly gritted his teeth and rolled up. He didn't dare to say any more nonsense to stimulate Lin Yi. Before the other party changed his mind, he quickly sat on the flying spirit beast not far away and prepared to leave. With Kong Ming taking the lead, other people such as Murong Zhen and others also followed suit. They took Meng Tong, who was scared out of his wits, and hurriedly climbed on the flying spirit beast to escape. Seeing these people fleeing in panic, Lin Yi could only stop, although he was unwilling. Otherwise, if he really killed these people, he would be happy, but he would have to pay with his life. At that time, even if Shanghai Tianhua came forward, he might not be able to save him. Inexplicably, these people know the place where I forge. It's not a big trouble. Lin, he had a headache. Due to the use of many rare materials, there weren't many precedents that could be used as reference. Even the king of junk couldn't be sure how long this forging would take. According to his past experience, it wouldn't be a short time. If Kong Ming and the others came back to wreak havoc, he couldn't let his guard down. The only good news was that these people's backers were either dead or missing. If they wanted to face Lin Yi with their own strength, they would only end up like today. They were purely looking for trouble, so there was no need to worry too much about it. At that moment, a few whistling sounds came from above. Then, 3 figures descended from the sky and appeared in front of Lin Yi with unfriendly expressions. They were Nan Tianba, Nan Tianmin, and Yu Zhe. "Second Lin, we finally caught you. My first and second martial uncles are here. Let's see how you're going to escape." Wahahaha. Yu Zhe laughed arrogantly. Previously, when they received Kong Ming's report, they didn't believe it. After the incident at the extreme North Island, although they hated Lin Yi, they didn't believe that Lin Yi was second Lin. In comparison, Kong Ming was more suspicious. But now, Lin's second was standing right in front of them. It didn't matter who his other identity was. All they needed to know was that Lin's second was the killer of their third brother, Nan Tianyong, and that Lin's second had the starring stone on him. Seeing the 3 people descending from the sky, Lin Yi was shocked. Previously, Kong Ming Ming said that someone knew they were here, but he didn't think that the people who knew were these three enemies. This matter was serious. Chapter 4053. As for Southern Sky Gate and Nan Tianba, the former was at the Foundation Establishment Perfection stage, and the latter was an unfathomable Gold Core stage expert. If Lin Yi wanted to face such a strong enemy by himself, he had no chance of winning. Even the possibility of retreating was very small, because the other side would not give him the chance to secretly prepare a killing move. Lin second, you really made me look for you. Third brother has died for so long. He can finally rest in peace today. Nan Tianba's body emitted an indescribable killing intent. Even the birds and beasts within 100 feet of him scattered in fright. Southern Sky Gate had a sinister expression as he said, "Be a bit more sensible and hand over the star inkstone. I can make the decision to leave your corpse intact, but it doesn't matter if you don't want to say it. At most, I'll spend a bit of energy to use the soul-searching technique. But if I do that, you'll be in trouble. Have you heard of human swine? I'll cut off your arms and legs, dig out your eyes, and cut off your tongue. I'll make you beg for death." Each one was more overbearing than the last. Lin Yi's heart trembled. His brain quickly turned to think of a way to deal with them, but his expression remained unchanged. He curled his lips and said, "So you're saying that I have to die today? Haha. Could it be that you're still dreaming of living past today? You even asked such a stupid question. Don't you think you're too stupid?" Yuja laughed wildly. After suppressing his anger for so long under the hands of Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate, he finally found a punching bag. Then, Yuja turned to Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate and asked, "Martial uncles, although this person is Lin Yi without a doubt, this disciple thinks it's necessary to find out his other identity. If he really is Lin Yi, then we'll be better prepared to face Hong Zhong and the others in the future." Although Kong Ming Ming had already said that Lin Yi was Lin Yi, it was still necessary to confirm it with his own eyes. Nan Tianba originally wanted to kill Lin Yi to avenge his third brother, but after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Fine. As for the whereabouts of the star inkstone and his other identity, just use the soul-searching technique on him. There's no need to waste time with him." All right. The Southern Heavenly Gate immediately agreed. Using the soul-searching art would damage one's divine sense, but compared to the bountiful rewards of the star inkstones, this small price was negligible. "Hold on, you don't have to do anything. I can tell you directly that I am Lin Yi," Lin Yi said as he reached out and took off the thousand silk mask, revealing his true colors. Nan Tianba and the other two's eyes became serious. Seeing this, Yuja was overjoyed. He turned to Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate and said, "I knew it. This little brat was without a doubt Lin Heir. However, your acting was too good, causing me to be punished by the two martial uncles. Today, I'll make you pay back 100 times over." He recalled his experience at the northernmost island, where Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate fought. It was Lin Heir and Lin Yi. To them, this was a double grudge. Just as well, we can settle old and new grudges at the same time. Now that Hong Zhong has gone far away to Middle Island, I want to see who else can save you. Second brother, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. Nan Tianba clenched his teeth and said. The Southern Sky Gate nodded. He took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. Even though Lin Yi was an expert at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, there is still a huge gap between their cultivation levels. Unless he used a trump card like the Pill Fire True Chi Bomb, his chances of winning against the Southern Sky Gate were slim. However, at this moment, Lin Yi suddenly smiled and said calmly, "Do you really think that since old Hong isn't here, no one can save me?" "What do you mean? Who else can save you? Why don't you tell us? It's not a wise choice to play tricks on us at a time like this. It will only make your death worse." The South Heaven Gate came to a stop and said with a hideous grin, "Trying to be mysterious? Do I look like such a senseless person? Why don't you just say it? The person who can save me is here, and he's right in the middle of you." Lin Yi stared at one person with a burning gaze. It was Yuja. Being stared at by Lin, he made Yuja's hair stand on end. Although he didn't know what the problem was, he had a bad feeling about this. You mean Yuja? Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate couldn't help but feel suspicious. The way they looked at you, Yuja also carried a sense of judgment. Although they were martial nephews, they didn't have much contact with Yuja before. They only relied on them after the Southern Sky Gate was killed, so they couldn't be considered to know him well. How is that possible? I want to tear him to pieces to avenge my master. How could I save him? Martial uncles, don't fall for this brat's trick. Yuja hurriedly denied. The Southern Sky Gate reacted quickly and said, Brat, don't look down on us too much. You actually said that Yuja would save you. Do you think we'll believe you with such a lowly attempt to sow discord? Do you think we're pigs? That's right. Even if Yuja had such thoughts, with his weak strength, wanting to save you in front of my eyes is simply a fool's dream. Nan Tianba also coldly laughed. Martial uncles are wise. This brat still hasn't given up on his evil intentions and wants to sow discord between martial nephews and the two martial uncles. He should be torn to pieces. Yuja let out a sigh of relief and quickly added insult to injury. Seeing the three people's expressions become more and more unfriendly, Lin, you remained calm. You've misunderstood. I didn't say Yuja would directly save me. What I meant was he will die in my place. What? You want me to die in your place? Is there something wrong with your head? Yuja was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. However, the bad feeling in his heart that he couldn't get rid of became even stronger. At the same time, Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate both looked at Lin like he was an idiot. They thought that Lin had been scared to the point of losing his mind and was starting to talk nonsense. Doesn't it sound ridiculous? However, after you watch this, I think you'll change your mind. Lin smiled. He took out his phone and pulled out a video he had taken earlier. What kind of bullshit is this? Nan Tianba and the other two couldn't help but be stunned. No matter how knowledgeable they were, it was impossible for them to have seen the development of smartphones in the mortal world. They immediately looked at each other in dismay. Chapter 4054. Why was this thing similar to the legendary Xiang chicken? Yuja, why are you in here? Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate asked curiously. I don't know either. Who knows what kind of sorcery this brat is using? Yuja himself was also at a loss. Looking at the familiar scene in the video, his heart started to beat wildly, uncontrollably. Following this, the scene changed. A familiar figure who was on the verge of death appeared, causing Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate to open their eyes wide. At this moment, no matter how shocked or slow Yuja was, he finally reacted. Wasn't this the scene of Nan Tianyong's death? If this continued, wouldn't it be the scene of him killing Nan Tianyong? Yuja suddenly quivered and finally found the source of the ominous feeling. If Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate were to see the scene of him killing his master, even if he had 10,000 lives, it wouldn't be enough to kill him. You still dare to play tricks? I'll kill you right now and avenge my master. In a moment of desperation, Yuja suddenly yelled and attacked Lin Yi. Even if he couldn't kill Lin Yi in one go, he had to destroy the unknown thing in Lin Yi's hand first. Otherwise, he would live in fear for the rest of his life. However, Yuja's attack was still a step too late. The scene of him killing Nan Tianyong with his own hand was clearly seen by Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate. Bang! Lin Yi raised his leg and kicked Yuja several meters away. The entire place fell into a dead silence. After a while, Nan Tianba's voice, which was filled with anger, finally reached everyone's ears. Yuja, did you kill third brother? No. Martial uncle, I'm innocent. This is all an illusion created by Lin Yi. Don't fall into his trap. Yuja hurriedly defended himself with sweat dripping down his forehead. Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate were infuriated. If this was true, then they had been played like fools by Yuja from the beginning. However, they had never seen a mobile phone before, and this video came from the hands of their enemy, Lin Yi. They had to carefully weigh the credibility of the video. But Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, Isn't it too late to quibble now? With your eyesight, it should be easy for you to determine whether this video is real or fake. Besides, don't you know the soul-searching technique? Whether it's real or fake, we'll know once we try. At this point, Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate were already 70 to 80% convinced. Being able to reach the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm, and even the Gold Core realm, there was no need to doubt their shrewdness. Especially when it came to something as important as Nan Tianyong's death. Trying to deceive them was easier said than done. Especially Nan Tianba, who had seen much of the world, immediately nodded his head. This is the Xiang chicken of the secular world? I've heard of these things. I didn't expect you to have them. Seeing the two of them looking at him with unkind eyes, Yuja's legs immediately went soft. He hysterically continued to quibble. Martial uncles don't believe him. How could I do something as disgraceful as killing my master? He's clearly trying to sow discord. If he used the soul-searching technique on me, even if I was wrongly accused, I would still become a cripple. Hearing this, Southern Sky Gate coldly said, "Don't worry. Even if I don't use the soul-searching technique, I can still determine whether it's real or fake. Third Brother's corpse is still in the law enforcement hall's ice cellar. As long as I compare the scars on Third Brother's body, the truth will naturally come to light. If the final result is that you're deceiving me, Yuja, just wait to be cut into pieces. I will definitely use you as a living sacrifice to Third Brother's soul in heaven." Nan Tianba's voice seemed to come out from between his teeth. The murderous intent in it made Yuja tremble in fear. At this moment, Yuja didn't know how to quibble anymore. He fell to the ground in a daze, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Lin Yi. At this moment, Southern Sky Gate suddenly said, "Big brother, even if Yuja really killed Third Brother, we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. We still haven't taken revenge for what happened in the extreme North Island. Furthermore, he still has the Star Ink Stone that I want." To Southern Sky Gate, including Third Brother Nan Tianyong's death, everything else was just fleeting clouds. Only the Star Ink Stone was his target. "That's fine, then we'll take this brat away as well. It won't be too late to kill him after we've figured everything out." Nan Tianba's only thought now was to find out who killed Third Brother. Seeing that Southern Sky Gate was about to make another move, Lin Yi immediately said, "Catch me? Have you thought about the consequences of this? Miss Shangwan also knows that I'm here. If you don't catch the murderer and make a move on me, think about the consequences yourself." "Oh, that's right. Pavilion Master Shangwan personally promised me that I can look for him if I need anything. As disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, don't you need to ask him for instructions?" Hearing this, the eyelids of Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate twitched. Shangwan Lan'er was nothing much, as she was just a young mistress with no real strength. However, Shangwan Tianhua was someone who could easily crush them to death with a single finger. If what Lin Yi said was true and they took Lin Yi away now, it was equivalent to publicly slapping Shanghai Tianhua in the face. The consequences would be unimaginable. Although Southern Sky Gate didn't want to believe these words, he remembered that Lin Yi was invited to Shanghai Laner's birthday banquet as a newcomer. Especially after the recent kidnapping incident, there were rumors that Shanghai Tianhua treated Lin Yi differently. This meant that these words were not fabricated. This risk was not something that Southern Sky Gate could take, nor could Nan Tianba. After hesitating for a moment, Nan Tianba clenched his teeth and coldly snorted, "Humph, I'll let you go for now. Let's go." After saying this, Nan Tianba grabbed the dejected Yuja with one hand and jumped onto the flying spiritual beast. Southern Sky Gate looked at Lin Yi unwillingly, but in the end, he didn't dare to make a move and bitterly followed. Seeing Nan Tianba and the other two fly away, Lin Yi finally let out a sigh of relief. Facing a Golden Core stage and a Foundation Establishment stage expert alone, even though they didn't really fight, the pressure was not something an ordinary person could handle. He'd probably be a corpse right now if he'd said anything wrong in that conversation. It was fortunate that he'd been smart enough to take a video of Yuja killing his own Shifu, Otherwise, he'd be dead for sure. Chapter 4055. Who are you? The king of tattered rags was shocked to see an unfamiliar face. Don't be nervous, it's me. I've always been wearing a mask. This is my true appearance. I'm really sorry for hiding it from you. Lin, he explained. Hey, it's you, brother Lin. It's okay, it's okay. I can also make a mask that can change one's appearance. It's understandable that you have to keep a trick up your sleeve. The tattered king smiled. Linny nodded and asked with concern, I've already taken care of the trouble outside. It didn't affect your forging, right? No, it's still the warm-up phase of forging. Although we can't stop halfway, at least for the next few days, we just have to wait patiently on the side. There's nothing to do for now. The tattered king said. That's good. I'm afraid that these people will ruin our plans. Lin sighed in relief. He didn't stay idle after that. He sat on the side and discussed the subsequent forging matters with the tattered king. This time, other than forging weapons for himself, he had another task, which was to observe and learn. No matter what, he was still a blacksmith. He should have some improvement in this aspect. Otherwise, he couldn't come back to the tattered king for help every time he had a need for forging weapons in the future. At the same time, Yuzha, who was brought back by Nan Tianba, wasn't in a good mood. The three of them went to the law enforcement hall to examine the corpse and quickly came to a conclusion. Third brother Nan Tianyong was indeed killed by Yuzha. Because of the appearance, Nan Tianyong didn't examine it carefully. Now that he saw it, he knew that he was tricked by Yuzha. The evidence was conclusive. This time, Yuzha was completely unable to explain himself. The last trace of hope in his heart was also annihilated. This time, he was completely disheartened. You treacherous scum. How could third brother have a disciple like you? He must have been blind. I will cut you into 1,000 pieces tomorrow. I will be a living sacrifice for third brother's soul in heaven. Nan Tianba was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No matter who killed Nan Tianyong, he could accept it. However, it was Nan Tianyong's disciple who killed him. This was too intolerable. They wouldn't even be able to die in peace. Especially since he, in the Southern Sky Gate, had been tricked by a nobody like Yuzha for so long. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. How embarrassing! A traitorous disciple killing his own master, no matter what era it was. It would be a huge scandal no matter where it was. Although Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate did not want anyone to know about it, there was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. The moment they had conducted the autopsy, the news had already spread. In less than half a day, the news of Yuzha killing his master had already spread throughout the 3 great pavilions. In the streets and alleys, almost everyone was talking about this matter. First, Su Lingqiong attempted to rape her and escaped, followed by the Shangguan Laner kidnapping incident. Now, the huge scandal of Yuzha murdering his teacher had been exposed. The 3 great pavilions, or more accurately, the Soaring Sky Pavilion, had been hit by one wave after another. However, even if everyone knew about it, it did not change Nan Tianba's determination to kill Yuzha. This was his family's matter, even if it was the 3 great pavilions and the law enforcement hall. They had no right to interfere. Furthermore, it had already been known by others. Nan Tianba decided to no longer hide it. He publicly opened a sacrificial altar on the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza and, in front of countless people, sacrificed Yuzha to his third brother, Nan Tianyong. To Nan Tianba, although doing this might attract criticism, it was the best way to wash away the shame that Yuzha had brought to his family. The news spread like wildfire. By noon the next day, the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza was already filled with hundreds and thousands of people. Not only were there disciples from the Soaring Sky Pavilion, disciples from the other 2 pavilions also came to watch the show. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate brothers suddenly stood everyone up. There was no other way. Yuzha had disappeared. Looking at the empty basement, Nan Tianba's domineering aura caused the 3 corpse god to explode. However, at the same time, even he himself felt that it was unimaginable. From yesterday until now, He had not taken even half a step out of the room above. In this completely sealed basement, the only exit was right under his feet. It was surrounded by a tight defensive array, so it was impossible to escape from any other place. However, such an impossible thing had happened right in front of his eyes. Yu Zhe, who was supposed to close his eyes and wait for his death, had disappeared from the face of the earth without any warning. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew his big brother's temperament, Southern Skygate would have suspected that his big brother's heart had softened and secretly released Yu Zhe. However, this was impossible. Regarding the death of his third brother, Nan Tianyong, Nan Tianba could only let Yu Zhe suffer a few more cuts and die a more miserable death. He definitely could not let him live. After a long time, Nan Tianba faintly said, "It seems like an expert saved him." What? Southern Skygate was shocked. Big brother, you personally guarded this place who could hide from your eyes and ears and save Yu Zhe from the basement. That's not possible, right? I also don't think it's possible, but there's always someone better than you out there. The truth is right here. What else can you say? Nan Tianba helplessly said. This time, Southern Skygate was also speechless. In his eyes, Nan Tianba was a gold core expert and was extremely strong. However, in the three great pavilions, there were still many people who were stronger than Nan Tianba. What the two of them couldn't understand was that in these past few months, Yu Zhe had always been trying to please them. When did he manage to hook up with such a strong person? Yu Zhe's disappearance immediately caused a huge uproar. Not only did it cause Nan Tianba and the Southern Skygate brothers to lose face, it was also the second case of someone escaping and disappearing after Su Lingsheng. The time between the two cases was less than a month. In the secret underground room, Yu Zhe slowly opened his eyes. Borrowing the dim light to look around, he suddenly trembled and begged, "Martial uncle, I beg you to spare my little life. It was Disciple's fault that I had evil thoughts. Disciple deserves to die. Disciple is worse than a dog, but Disciple is still useful to you. As long as you spare Disciple this time, in this life, no, in the next life, the life after that, I will work like a horse for you." Halfway through his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a black, cloaked figure in the shadows. "Save it. I'm not Nan Tianba. You don't need to be afraid. I won't kill you, and I won't hand you over to Nan Tianba." Chapter 4056. Now that he had woken up, Yu Zhe instinctively thought that he was still in that secret room. He had never thought that he had already been moved without anyone noticing. Even though it was still an underground secret room, it was no longer the same room he had been in before. "Then who are you? Why did you bring me here?" Yu Zhe rejoiced in his heart, but immediately became vigilant again. Could it be that he had just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den? The dark and gloomy secret room in front of him was even more indestructible than Nan Tianba's, and there was nowhere to escape to. If this mysterious person really wanted to save him, why would he bring him to this kind of place? "You're quite vigilant. It seems that I didn't save you for nothing." The mysterious man paused for a moment and suddenly smiled meaningfully. "To be honest, I admire you very much. It's rare to see a person who can kill his own master with his own hands. In terms of temperament, you meet my requirements very well." "What do you mean?" Yu Zhe became more cautious. He inconspicuously moved backwards, trying to stay as far away from this mysterious person as possible. He had indeed killed Nan Tianyong with his own hands, but he still felt very guilty about this matter. Normally, he did not dare and did not want to take the initiative to think about this matter. However, from the mysterious person's attitude, this person seemed to admire him very much. Wasn't he a pervert? Seeing Yu Zhe's cautious expression, the mysterious person did not mind and lightly said, "It's nothing. I only saved you because I admire you. Otherwise, you would have been cut into pieces by Nan Tianba in front of everyone. However, don't think about running away now that you're here. That's not realistic. Also, I believe that you're not stupid enough to go out and seek death." After saying this, the mysterious person's killing intent almost materialized for a moment. Even if it was only for a short moment, the shock it gave Yu Zhe was unforgettable. this mysterious person in front of him. He was not an existence that Nantianba could fight against. Yuzha took a deep breath and finally recognized his current situation. His previous thoughts were not wrong. He had indeed just left the wolf's den and had immediately fallen into an even more dangerous tiger's den. "What does Your Excellency want me to do?" Yuzha stared at the figure in the darkness and asked. The mysterious person did not speak and threw something over. It landed in front of Yuzha and made a clanking sound. Yuzha was shocked. He thought that it was a hidden weapon that could kill someone, but in the next moment, his eyes suddenly widened as he stared at the stone in front of him, unable to move his eyes away. After a long time, Yuzha swallowed a few times, his face filled with disbelief as he stammered. This is Starring Stone. Your eyesight isn't bad. There's no mistaking it. This is Staring Stone. However, half of it has already been used up." The mysterious man nodded calmly. "Used half." Yuzha couldn't help but stare blankly when he heard this. He observed carefully under the dim light. Only then did he discover that this piece of Staring Stone was not the one he had seen at the Hong Merchant House. Not only was its shape different, its color and foundation were clearly weaker. Even so, this was a treasure that Yuzha dreamed of. The Staring Stone could allow one to perfectly break through to the most powerful golden core stage. And even if one used half of the Staring Stone, the supplementary effects wouldn't be too bad. Seeing Yuzha's greedy expression, as if he wanted nothing more than to swallow the Staring-Stone into his stomach, the mysterious person laughed. "Not only will you be able to keep your life, but this half of the Staring Stone will also be yours. How about it?" Although Yuzha's mind was already clouded by the Staring Stone, he hadn't completely lost his reason. Hearing this, he immediately hesitated and struggled. "Don't worry, I won't let you suffer a loss. This piece of Staring Stone is only an advance payment to you, that's all." The mysterious person paused, and then his tone changed. "Of course, if you don't agree, that's fine. I won't kill you. I will only return the item to its rightful owner and send you back to the hands of Nantianba." Yuzha quivered and remembered that with his current situation, he didn't dare to go out. Without the protection of this mysterious person, his fate would be death by 1,000 cuts. Thinking of this, Yuzha didn't hesitate any longer. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I agree. Then what do you want me to do now?" The mysterious person wasn't surprised at this and said calmly, "There's nothing I want you to do right now. You just need to focus on cultivating here and quickly increase your strength. When I need you, I will naturally notify you." "I understand. No matter what, many thanks for your kindness in saving my life. In the future, if you have any orders, I will definitely go through fire and water and offer my life to you." Yuzha immediately swore and flattered. Unexpectedly, the mysterious person said mockingly, "You don't need to do this with me. You're someone who can even kill his own master without blinking. Do you think I will believe your cheap oath? Remember, never play tricks in front of me. If this happens again, I will make you regret not dying at the hands of Nantianba." After saying this, the mysterious person's figure flickered and disappeared right in front of Yuzha's eyes. It was a simple sentence, but the feeling of being seen through was even more frightening to Yuzha than the physical killing intent from before. He was filled with lingering fear. However, Yuzha's attention quickly shifted back to the Staring Stone. All sorts of experiences had made him deeply understand that only when one's own strength was powerful, everything else was fleeting. This Staring Stone was a cheat that could allow him to ascend the path of the strong. Yuzha's disappearance had caused a huge uproar in the 3 great pavilions. However, Lin Yi knew nothing about it. During this period of time, he had stayed with the tattered king and focused on his great business of forging. 7 days had passed since Kong Ming Ming and Nantianba had come looking for trouble. As early as 3 days ago, the most basic warm-up stage had already ended. Now it was time for the most crucial part of forging. The more powerful the divine weapon, the higher the requirements for the forging master. There couldn't be the slightest mistake during the forging process. Even if there was a slight deviation of half a centimeter, the final result might be completely different from what one had expected. Extremely rare materials, such as the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient pure soil, would also be burnt to ashes. From then on, they would become a pile of waste, which made one sigh with regret. Not only was Lin Yi unwilling to see such a tragic result, but the tattered king, who regarded forging as his life, was even more unwilling to see it. For the past few months, the tattered king had spent a lot of effort on forging. Even compared to Lin Yi, who had provided many extremely rare materials, the amount he had spent was no less. Chapter 4057. Since the beginning of the forging process, the king of Junk had been extremely tense. He was personally in charge of every step of the process and could not afford to make any mistakes. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't idling around. It was a rare opportunity to observe the entire process from such a close distance, and in just a short 7 days, he'd already learned quite a bit from the king of Garbage's teachings. In these 7 days, there were no deviations in the crafting process. Everything was going according to the script that the king of Junk had planned beforehand. The anxiety in his heart slowly faded away, and he started to feel more at ease. He was glad that he hadn't found the wrong person. Everything was difficult at the beginning. Since they had passed the most important beginning stage, the forging process was already half a success. Lenny thought that everything would go smoothly. However, on the 8th day, everything came to an abrupt end. That's it. Looking at the gradually calming casting pool, Lin Yi was dumbfounded. This was completely different from the plan that the king of Junk had told him about. At this moment, even the king of Junk himself was going crazy. Although he could not accurately predict how long the forging process would take, it was only the 8th day. According to the experience of many blacksmiths, the more powerful a divine weapon was, the longer the forging process would take. As long as a divine weapon was of slightly higher grade, it was normal for it to take several months or even several years. But this time, the forging process had used extremely rare materials like the 10,000-year-old tree crystal and the ancient sacred soil. No matter what, it couldn't be weaker than other weapons, right? However, it was an indisputable fact that the casting pool had calmed down. Normally, such a situation would only occur when the final weapon was formed. However, it was only the 8th day. Looking at the lump in the forging pool, even a ghost wouldn't believe that it was a fully formed, godly weapon. What should we do now? Lin Yi's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the king of Junk. This thing, should I use it to smash people? Impossible. 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 The tattered king hammered his head as he paced back and forth around the forging pool, mumbling to himself. Lenny couldn't help but worry that the guy might just fall in the foundry when he saw how crazy he was. That would really kill him. Lin Yi, on the other hand, found it inconceivable as well. The whole plan was thought up by the king of Garbage alone, but he'd analyzed and discussed it with Lin Yi in detail during the process. To ensure the success rate of the forging, he'd done a lot of preparation beforehand. Lin Yi had specially gone to the far north island to bid for those high-level casting materials. There was only one ultimate use for it, and that was to ensure the stability and success rate of the crafting process. This was one of the reasons why the crappy king asked Lin Yi to take out a couple of sky-class weapons he didn't use and put them into the crafting process. Who would have thought that, even after making such thorough preparations, it would still end up like this? This? Lin Huang asked. This? The king of the tatters. We failed. At this moment, the king of Junk squatted down. He stuck his face to the edge of the casting pool, which really shocked Lenny. Is this guy really going to take things too hard? Although the casting pool has calmed down, the temperature is still shockingly high. However, the temperature was frighteningly high. Even a foundation establishment expert would not be able to endure it. Just when Lenny was about to stop him, the king of Junk's eyes suddenly lit up. No, I know the reason. We haven't failed yet. Haven't failed yet. Lin Yi was stunned. Yes, we haven't failed yet. To be precise, we haven't completely failed yet. The king of Junk instantly became 100 times more energetic. Pointing at the casting pool, he explained to Lin Yi, "You'll know if you look closely. This pool has not completely cooled down, and the god weapon has not been completely shaped. It seems that if we don't find a way to solve the problem, it will remain in this lukewarm state. We still have a way to fix it." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel refreshed. After observing for a while, he confirmed that the god weapon was still changing at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. He immediately asked, "What problem should we solve?" "Solve the conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land," the King of Junk said with certainty. "Brother Lin, I've told you before that the most basic requirement for casting is that the attributes of all the casting materials must be compatible. Even if they are incompatible, we must find a way to neutralize them with other auxiliary materials. This is the problem we're facing now. How could it be? The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, and the ancient Pure Land is of the earth attribute. How could there be a conflict between the two?" Lin Yi asked curiously. It was common sense that wood and earth were mutually reinforcing. The King of Junk shook his head and said, "You're wrong. These two materials are too rare. It's difficult to understand their specific origins, so we've all made a mistake on this most basic question. The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, but the ancient Pure Land is not of the pure earth attribute. If it's not of the earth attribute, then what is it?" Lin Yi was puzzled. Even if he did not understand its origin, how could the standard soil of the ancient Pure Land be of any other attribute? I've read about the ancient Pure Land in my master's notes. Although its attributes were not clearly mentioned, it was mentioned that the ancient Pure Land usually only appears in the craters of ancient volcanoes. The King of Junk said excitedly, "Now you understand. Although the ancient Pure Land has the earth attribute, it also has the fire attribute. Therefore, to a certain extent, there is a conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." Only then did Lin Yi understand. He nodded and said, "No wonder such a strange situation occurred. Under normal circumstances, if it was a simple conflict of attributes, it would have completely failed by now. It turns out that the ancient Pure Land's earth and fire attributes are both conflicting and compatible with the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." That's right. Fortunately, my mistake wasn't too fatal. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a chance to remedy it, and I would be even more ashamed to face you, Brother Lin," the King of Junk said awkwardly. Chapter 4058. Don't worry, Brother Lin. Since we've found the root of the problem, I'm confident that I can succeed as long as we can solve the problem of the attribute conflict," the King of Junk promised. "That's great, but how are we going to solve this problem now?" Lin Yi asked. The process of forging could not be stopped halfway, and with the current situation, the lump inside could not even be considered a semi-finished product. It was even more impossible to take it out now. If everything goes as expected, the forging pool will continue to be in this state. However, to be on the safe side, it's better for me to stay here and keep an eye on it. Therefore, I can only trouble Brother Lin to find some materials to make up for it, so that we can continue forging," the King of Junk said as he took out a pen and paper, then listed a list of materials and passed it to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took a glance and asked, "Are these materials common?" "Most of them are common, so we should be able to buy them directly. However, there are two that we'll have to try our luck. Fortunately, we're not in a rush, and I'll find a way to control it. Even if it takes longer, it won't be a problem. Being slow is also a stage of forging, so taking longer might not be a bad thing," the King of Junk analyzed. "All right, I'll think of a way to make up for the materials. I'll leave it to you, Brother Wang." Lin Yi immediately set off. Hong Merchant Guild. After Hong Zhongyuan went to Middle Island to take up his post, it was now Si Haixiao's territory. At this moment, there were two familiar faces in the private room. They were Nan Tianba and Nan Tianmen. "Shopkeeper Si, we have a presumptuous request. We hope you can help us find someone." Nan Tianmen and Nan Tianba looked at each other and pleaded. "Oh, who? Could it be about Lin Air? There's no news yet, but I've already sent people to investigate." Si Haishao casually answered as he drank the high-quality spiritual tea. Actually, we already know Lin Ayer's true identity and his whereabouts. This guy is the Lin I mentioned to you before. However, we're looking for someone else. You've met him once before. He's my unworthy martial nephew, Yuja. The Southern Heavenly Gate said awkwardly. He and Nan Tianba had already searched everywhere they could, but they still couldn't find any trace of Yuja. They had no choice but to run over to ask Si Haishao for help. After all, Si Haishao was a supervisor. Letting him borrow the eyes and ears of the Hong Ing group to find out Yuja's whereabouts was much better than relying on the two of them to run around blindly. Ask about Yuja. Don't you know the whereabouts of your own martial nephew? Si Haishao was taken aback. Since we already know that Lin Yi is Lin Yi II, we should think of a way to deal with Lin Yi first. Why bother looking for Yuja? Sigh, shopkeeper Si, there's something you don't know. We only learned recently that the culprit that killed third brother wasn't Lin Yi, but Yuja's rebellious disciple. The South Heaven Gate briefly explained the recent events to Si Haishao. Such a complicated inside story made Si Haishao click his tongue in wonder. Yuja killing his teacher. Although it had caused a lot of commotion recently, it was mainly focused on the three great pavilions. It didn't spread much in the marketplace. Furthermore, he had been busy reorganizing the Hong Chamber of Commerce recently. In order to erase the traces left behind by Hong Zhong's many years of business, he had no time to care about this kind of gossip. I didn't think that this kid would actually be a traitor despite looking so much like a dog. Fine. This shopkeeper will send a message to the old partner of the Hong Ing group, who is in charge of the North Island, and let him investigate for you. Since the matter has become so big, the eyes and ears in the North Island should take the initiative to pay attention to Yuja's whereabouts. After Si Haishao said this, he immediately wrote a note and had someone send a letter with a bird. Since they were both in the North Island, the news spread very quickly. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Si Haishao received a reply. Unfortunately, the other party's reply was that they didn't receive any news regarding Yuja's whereabouts. Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate were both extremely depressed. Now that the missing Yuja had become the two brothers' laughingstock, if they let him go on like this, the prestige they had established in the Soaring Sky Pavilion would probably be completely gone. Seeing the two of them like this, Si Haishao comforted them. Actually, you don't need to be too discouraged. That kid Yuja can hide for a while, but can he hide forever? The Honging group has so many eyes and ears in the North Island. As long as he appears, don't worry about not being able to find him. This is all just a matter of time. Also, isn't that Lin Yi ready-made? Although Yuja killed Nan Tianyong, there's still a problem with him. Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate both nodded. We also know that Lin Yi isn't a good person. When he pretended to be second Lin and took away the Star Inkstone, it was actually because he had bad intentions. Everything started because of him. Otherwise, third brother wouldn't have ended up being killed by his own disciple. That's right. So this shopkeeper is prepared to help you deal with him. Si Haishao suddenly said. Huh. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. Although Si Haishao had previously agreed to help find second Lin, the perfunctory meaning behind it could be seen even if they were blind. Why'd he suddenly take the initiative now? Don't be so surprised. These 2 days, your uncle, Nan Tian Polaris, just happened to send this shopkeeper a letter. He asked this shopkeeper to help him teach a lesson to an enemy. Chapter 4059. Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Ha! The North Island is like this. There are no female cultivators here, so it can't be compared to the Middle Island. However, if Shopkeeper C wants to play, we brothers know a good place. Oh, since I don't have anything to do, why don't we go and relax together? Si Haishao immediately became interested and suggested. That's great. Shopkeeper C, as the host, we haven't had a chance to welcome you. This time, we could be the host and treat you as a welcome. The two nodded. For them, Si Hai Xiao was a good backer, and they needed to find a way to curry favor with him. Since Si Hai Xiao was interested, it couldn't be any better. They only needed to spend some spiritual jades to get closer to such a person. This was something they couldn't ask for more. After coming to the North Island, Si Hai Xiao had been busy eliminating the influence left by the previous Hongzhou. After holding in for so long, it was hard for him to restrain his desire. The three of them hit it off and immediately went out together. Although there weren't many female cultivators on the North Island, the place in Tianba and Southern Sky Gate brought Si Hai Xiao to was the largest cultivator village around the three pavilions. The people here were all ordinary people. It was similar to the secular world, with restaurants, brothels, casinos, and other places of entertainment. Cultivators were humans too, with 7 emotions and 6 desires. Apart from cultivating, they still had various needs. When they needed to indulge themselves, they would often come to the cultivator village. Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate brothers had long been a frequent visitor here. There was only one common currency in the 5 great heavenly islands, and that was the spiritual jade. Since this was only a village where ordinary people lived, even the best brothel would not be able to afford such a small amount of money to the high and mighty cultivators. With just a few spiritual jades, one could easily play with the most beautiful and skilled female cultivators. Although they were just ordinary women and not superior female cultivators, if the quality wasn't good enough, quantity could make up for it. It was enough for Si Hai Xiao to have fun. While Si Hai Xiao and Nan Tianba were enjoying themselves in the cultivator village, Shanghai Laner, who was now grounded at home by Shanghai Tianhua, finally saw her best friend, Ning Shuefei, who came all the way from West Island. It was rare for the two girls to run into each other. Both of them cheered excitedly, adding a bit of liveliness to the usually tranquil Hualan house. They were also best friends who could talk about anything. Ning Shuefei and Han Jingjing were like-minded because of their similar hobbies, while she and Shangwan Lan'er were similar because of their similar personalities. Almost everything was a common topic between them. Come on, little Lan'er, quickly tell me about the rape. Oh, and about your kidnapping. You didn't explain it clearly in the letter. Ning Shuefei's eyes lit up with excitement, even though Shangwan Laner was heartless. When he heard this, his face darkened, and he said speechlessly, Fei, you came all the way here just to ask about this? Aren't you here to comfort me? Sob, I'm so sad. Of course I'm here to comfort you, little Lon, but it's such a fun thing. As a best friend, don't you want to share it with me? I'm also concerned about you. Ning Shuefei rolled her eyes and quibbled. All right. You always use the excuse of comforting people to rub salt into my wounds. I'm really defeated by you. Shangwan Laner could only surrender helplessly. Although Shangwan Laner deliberately pretended to be depressed, she could no longer hold back her smile after a while. She laughed and played together with Ning Shuefei. Being pestered by Ning Shuefei, Shangwan Laner told her everything that had happened recently in detail. Ning Shuefei was amazed. Shangwan Laner didn't say it in detail in the letter before, especially when they heard that Little White took a giant scissors and wiped off Su Lingchong's penis. The two girls laughed back and forth, gave a thumbs up, and praised Little Curly Bear for being wise and capable. In the two things that Shangwan Laner had experienced recently, whether it was Su Lingchong's attempted rape or being kidnapped a few days ago, the protagonist was the same person, Lin Yi, in addition to herself. Why does the name Lin Yi sound so familiar? After hearing this, Ning Shuefei couldn't help scratching her head. After thinking hard for a long time, she suddenly patted her head and said, By the way, I've heard this name long ago when I was in West Island. Really? Shangwan Laner couldn't help but be stunned. Although she liked her junior brother very much, Lin Yi was just a newcomer after all. If he was a little famous in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, it was reasonable, but even Ning Shuefei, who was far away in West Island, had heard of him. This was impossible, right? It's true. I told you in the letter before that I have a good friend from the secular world. Her name is Han Jingjing. She often talks about Lin Yi to me, But whether this Lin Yi is the same person as the Lin you mentioned, I don't know. Ning Shuefei tilted her head and said, Hey, I remember that junior brother is also from the secular world. Is the Lin he mentioned to your friend really the same person? Shangwan Laner thought about it, and suddenly felt that it was very possible. She immediately suggested with great interest, Why don't we go to ask junior brother now? Hee little Lon, aren't you grounded by your grandfather now? How can you go out? Ning Shuefei said with a smile. If I am alone, Grandpa will definitely not let me go out. But now you are here, Fei Fei. As the host, I will take you out to play. He will definitely agree. Shangwan Laner said with confidence. She was bored at home these days and wanted to take the opportunity to sneak out to play. Okay, but before looking for Lin Yi, I want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce first, Ning Shuefei said. Why do you want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce? To buy something? Didn't you just go to the auction in the far North Island recently? Shangwan Laner asked curiously. No, I'm going to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to find a young man. Ning Shuefei's mouth curved slightly, like a kitten. Looking for a young man? Shangwan Laner was even more puzzled. She looked at Ning Shuefei up and down and asked curiously, Fei Fei, which young man are you looking for? Why are you looking for him? I won't tell you now. I will tell you when I find him. Ning Shuefei said mysteriously, You will know when the time comes. He has a lot of good things in his hands. Chapter 4060. Just as she had said, although Shangwan Tianhua had grounded her, he couldn't possibly ground Ning Shuefei, who had come all the way from afar as well. After hearing their words, she immediately nodded in agreement. Although there had been a kidnapping incident not long ago, this was still the territory of the 3 pavilions in the North Island. As long as precautions were taken, there was no need to worry about their personal safety. The two immediately went out with the little curly bear and went straight to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce in the inner street of the marketplace. Today happened to be the opening day of the inner street. They didn't even need to reveal their identities and directly walked into the gate of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce along with the crowd. On the North Island, female cultivators were extremely rare, especially the 2 women who were rare beauties. Even if they were mixed in the noisy crowd, no matter where they went, they would naturally become the focus of the audience. As soon as the 2 of them walked into the Hong Chamber of Commerce, a sharp-eyed shop assistant abandoned the other customers and welcomed them with a face full of joy. Ladies, what treasures are you looking to buy? Do you want me to show you around the shop? No, I'm looking for a little shop assistant of your Hong's Chamber of Commerce. Ning Shuefei said impatiently. Little shop assistant? I'm a little shop assistant, right? What can I do for you, miss? The shop assistant was slightly stunned and then quickly smiled attentively. Such a beautiful woman came to find him. Was he going to have good luck with women today? Secretly pinching Laner, who was snickering, Ning Shuefei rolled her eyes speechlessly and curled her lips. I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for another little shop assistant. As they spoke, Ning Shuefei and Laner, who were already the center of attention, became the focus of the audience. Everyone present couldn't help but look at each other. 2 drooling beauties were looking for a little shop assistant. What was going on? Was this what people said? Fresh flowers are destined to be inserted in cow dung. Looking for a little shop assistant? Si Hai Xiao had just come back at this moment, although he was already drunk. But his strength meant that no matter how drunk he was, he wouldn't fall down directly. Hearing the sweet female voice coming from the crowd downstairs, he immediately poked his head out of the private room on the 2nd floor in a trance. After seeing Ning Shuefei and Laner, Si Hai Xiao's eyes instantly widened. What the fuck? These 2 girls were simply the best. Although Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate brothers had accompanied him to the brothel, they were only ordinary women after all. They could not be compared to the female cultivators on the Middle Island. They were on a completely different level, so Si Hai Xiao was not able to enjoy himself to the fullest. However, he did not expect that the moment he returned to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Si Haixiao's appetite was immediately aroused when he found these two exquisite girls that were rarely seen in Nakajima. He looked at the two girls lecherously while pinching his chin and muttering, "You're looking for a young man? Why did he look for a young waiter? Could it be that these two women are the mistresses of some young waiter?" At this moment, Si Haixiao was both drunk and lustful. As he thought about it in a daze, he immediately felt that it was highly possible. He had been busy dealing with the internal affairs of the three great pavilions during this period of time and hadn't officially walked around the three great pavilions. It was not surprising that he did not know Shangwan Laner. As far as he knew, there were no female cultivators on the North Island, so he ruled out the possibility that the two women were cultivators of the three pavilions. Since these two girls were looking for some bullshit young waiter, then they were definitely mistresses. Damn it. Just which fellow was it that was so lucky to get such a stunning and exquisite chick? What a waste of God's gifts. Even a manager like me doesn't have such luck with women. Thinking of this, Si Haixiao could not help but feel lustful. These two women were definitely ordinary women who had not seen much of the world. Since they were interested in a mere young waiter, then wouldn't it just be a matter of a word for him to get them into bed? Waha! God want me to enjoy my luck with women. I really can't stop it. Si Haixiao immediately forced himself to calm down and couldn't wait to get up and walk downstairs. At the same time, he was still imagining the wonderful scene of two stunning beauties serving him together in his mind. That feeling was simply killing him. Just then, Lin Yi suddenly appeared in the crowd at the door. Lin Yi came here to buy the supplementary materials that the king of junk had told him before. Although Hong Zhong was no longer here, these were basically things that could be bought normally, not precious treasures like the star inkstone that could only be found by chance. Therefore, he thought that Si Haixiao would not make things difficult for him for such a small matter. Of course, if Si Haixiao really did this, Lin could also go to other places to buy them, such as asking Chen Heihu for help. However, Chen Heihu's business was not as big as that of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce. Even if he was willing to help, many materials were not in stock, and he had to find someone to buy them temporarily, which was a little troublesome. As soon as he entered the door, Lin Yi noticed the two women, Ning Shuifei and Shangwan Laner, who had become the focus of the crowd. The sharp-eyed little curly bear also found Lin Yi at once, and directly jumped over everyone's head and jumped on a Lin Yi's shoulder. "Little buddy, you are here. I was just looking for you." In order to explain to West Island and Rising Sky Pavilion, they would even punish Si Haixiao severely. In short, Si Haixiao, the newly appointed shopkeeper, had only been in high spirits for a few days, but in the blink of an eye, he was finished. "Little junior brother, let's go and find a place to have a good talk with me. When exactly did you become a staff member of the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Why didn't I know about it at all?" Shangwan Laner pouted gloomily. The matter of the northernmost island. Lin Yi didn't tell her, and Ning Shuifei kept her in suspense. She was kept in the dark from the beginning and became an outsider. Compared to being slandered by Si Haixiao as a prostitute, this matter was much more serious. Yes, I also have something very important to ask you. Yes, I also have something very important to ask you. Ning Shuifei immediately put aside the unhappiness just now and pulled Lin Yi excitedly. Then okay. Lin Yi nodded helplessly. Anyway, seeing that the Hong Chamber of Commerce was in a mess, he couldn't buy anything for a while, so he could only go with these two young ladies for the time being. Being surrounded by two beautiful young ladies on both sides, Lin Yi's treatment really made the people around him drool with envy, especially when they thought of the rich backgrounds of these two women. They were even more jealous. Any one of them would be a winner in life with both power and beauty, let alone one against two. This kid looked thin and weak. He didn't look like an expert, and there was nothing special about him. How could he be favored by the heavens? Of course, jealousy was just jealousy. looking at the 5 soaring sky pavilion gold core stage experts scattered around the 2 women, with Si Haixiao's bloody example in front of them. No matter how unbalanced they could only watch helplessly and did not dare to make the slightest movement. Compared to Lin Yi's blessing of having 2 women, Si Haixiao's ending was really bitter tears. When he woke up from the unbearable pain all over his body, a whole day had passed. When he finally realized the situation he was in, he was so shocked that he couldn't help but gasp. As the manager of the North Island branch of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, Si Haixiao was actually thrown on the street of the inner street of the market and left to fend for himself. What the fuck? Are you all dead? How dare you treat me like this? Today, I will kick all of you out. Si Haixiao's old face suddenly turned red when he was looked up and down by the strange eyes of passers-by, and he cursed angrily. Even if he made such a stupid mistake as yesterday, he was still a manager after all, and it was impossible for him to end up like a beggar on the street. Si Haixiao immediately cursed and tried to get up, but after struggling for a few times, he found that he could not stand up at all. Then he realized that the tendons in his limbs had been broken by someone with true qi, and he was now a useless man. But even so, Si Haixiao still did not lose his usual arrogance. He shouted to the passers-by, "Whoever comes over and carries me to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, I will give you a big reward." If what he said was on the open day of the inner street yesterday, maybe some passers-by who did not know the truth would be willing to give it a try. But now it was not the open day, and those who could come and go here were all people of status in the North Island. Si Haixiao's stupid feat yesterday had already been spread by word of mouth, and no one would pay attention to such a blind fool. After shouting for a long time, seeing that the passers-by were still indifferent, Si Haixiao finally stopped shouting in despair. But he did not give up. Since no one was willing to carry him, he would climb over by himself. The inner street was so big that even if he climbed all the way from the street to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the distance was not too far. Once he arrived at the Hong Chamber of Commerce, it would be his territory. Under the gazes of the onlookers, Si Haixiao gritted his teeth and forced his way to the entrance of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. However, his subordinates, who were incomparably fawning over him, were only slightly stunned when they saw him. Then, they immediately looked away as if they did not see him. The mysterious man nodded in satisfaction and said, "I heard that you started out in the intelligence department. Not bad. I have an organization in my hands, and I'll hand it over to you in the future." "Oh, I'll take charge. What I need to do?" Si Haixiao's eyes lit up. The mysterious man smiled faintly and said, "It's very simple. Help me find some people with potential but evil intentions. For example, people like you." Huh? Si Haixiao suddenly felt that his brain was not working properly. It was easy to understand finding people with potential but evil intentions. What kind of request was that? There's no need to ask why. As long as you agree, I'll give you a brand new future. Your status won't be lower than a manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. As for the power, it'll be beyond your imagination. The mysterious man's tone was calm, but it sounded strangely enticing to Si Haixiao. "All right, I agree." Si Haixiao nodded immediately. "Very good. From today onwards, you'll be the manager of the Chamber of Commerce in the North Island. Of course, this is only your public identity. As for your secret identity, it's the team leader of the intelligence team in the North Island," the mysterious man said calmly. Huh? Even though Si Haixiao had already thought of countless possibilities in his mind, he could not help but be shocked when he heard the mysterious man's words. Forget about the two girls. That Lin Yi is the main culprit that caused this old man's tragedy. If I don't take revenge, I'm not a man. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate nodded and said, "That's right. We must find a way to kill that brat Lin Yi. He's too despicable. However, I heard that he's always with Shanghai Laner and Ning Shuifei. He's also surrounded by the 5 experts from the Rising Sky Pavilion. It's not a good time to make a move on him. The future is long. Isn't it just a few more days? This old man still has this much patience." Si Haixiao's eyes were filled with hatred. He then said, "This old man has made a comeback, but I haven't had the time to celebrate. Apart from the two of you, I don't know anyone else on the North Island. Why don't we go for a drink and have some fun? Since Shopkeeper C has given the order, we wouldn't dare to disobey." The two of them immediately smiled and said. The three of them immediately found a top-notch restaurant and chatted happily. However, this time, Si Haixiao had learned his lesson. He didn't dare to mention anything about finding women again. After all, he was forced to take the poison. If he fooled around all day and didn't do anything serious, he would be finished if he angered the mysterious person behind him. You two are the local bullies of the North Island, so you have a deep understanding of all aspects of the North Island. I have a question to ask you. I don't know if you have ever heard of people with potential but evil intentions? Si Haixiao said, weighing his words. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate were stunned. They then blurted out, "Isn't that you, Jia?" He turned around and left with Zhong Pingliang. He'd suffered a huge loss at Lin Yi's hands last time. This was the perfect time to get back at him and make the guy feel heartache. He didn't have to fight Lin Yi head-on anyway, so there was no risk at all. On the way, Zhong Pingliang was worried. He wanted to send a message to Lin Yi, but he didn't even know where Lin Yi was. He could only follow Kong Ming and play it by ear. When they reached the cave entrance, Kong Ming jumped in impatiently, with Zhong Pingliang following closely behind. At this moment, King of Junk was studying the forging notes his Shifu had left him. Although the accident from before seemed to be safe, and there was still room to salvage the situation, King of Junk was truly scared out of his wits. While Lin Yi was collecting materials, he had to calm down and review his forging plan from start to finish. He had to review the notes, and perhaps he'd be able to find his blind spots and prevent similar mistakes from happening again. It was because he was too focused that he didn't notice Kong Xiaoming and Kong Xiaoming sneaking in. It was only when the two appeared behind him that he finally reacted. "Who's there?" The King of Junk was shocked and jumped up from the ground. "Manager C, you really know how to dote on me. I'm embarrassed." Murong Zhun smiled tenderly and immediately sat down beside Si Haixiao. Her petite body naturally leaned close to him. Seeing Si Haixiao's lecherous expression, Kong Ming couldn't help but curse in his mind. Murong Zhun really was a slut that could be slept with by anyone. She even threw herself at an old man like him. She had no morals at all. Kong Ming, however, had forgotten that Murong Zhun had slept with him back then. She was only interested in his backer. For this kind of woman, Qin Feng was not a match for her. For a woman like her, her body was just a capital. As long as the opportunity was right, she could use it for a trade at any time. "Pinliang, I'm very pleased that you were willing to introduce Lady Murong to me this time. I'll remember that you've done a great job. Work hard in the future. I have high hopes for you." Si Haixiao praised Zhong Pinliang as he enjoyed Murong Zhun's flirtatious behavior. This time, Kong Ming was even more depressed. It seemed like Si Haixiao favored Zhong Pinliang even more, and he himself had to settle for second place. As for Murong Zhun, there was even less of a chance for him to compete. Accompanying Ning Shuifei and Shangwan Laner to play around, Lin Yi the island beauty's personal expert, was in a much better mood than Kong Ming Ming. However, he didn't completely forget about his business during the play. He brought the two girls to the Hong Merchant Association again. This time, without Si Haixiao's obstruction, Lin Yi successfully bought most of the supplementary materials listed by King of Junk. He even got one of the two rare materials that King of Junk mentioned that required luck. However, the last one was nowhere to be found. The appearance-growing mushroom was a spiritual medicine that looked very similar to Ganoderma. At the same time, it was a rare material for forging weapons. According to King of Junk, the 5 elements during forging were different from the normal 5 elements. The process of forging weapons was the reverse of the 5 elements. Therefore, the key to perfectly harmonizing the attributes of the materials depended on the appearance-growing mushroom. However, the appearance-growing mushroom was as rare as the heart-devouring exquisite grass. More importantly, once it was harvested, it had a very short lifespan and would easily wither and become useless. Therefore, unless a special reservation was made, even a large merchant association like the Hong Merchant Association wouldn't be able to stock it. It was the same for other merchant associations. Fortunately, Lin Yi wasn't in a hurry. After making a reservation at the Hong Merchant Association, he specifically went to find Chen Heihu and asked him to help him buy it. It was only then that Ning Xuefei finally realized what was going on. She asked doubtfully, "Lin Yi, so you're not a waiter from the Hong Merchant Association?" Of course not. The newcomers in the Welcome Pavilion don't work part-time outside. As for the reason why I went to the northernmost island with Hong Zhong last time, it was only because I had a good relationship with him. I never said I was a waiter from the Hong Merchant Association. Lin Yi shrugged. Then why did you ask me to ask Hong Zhong for elixirs last time? I thought you were from the Hong Merchant Association. Ning Xuefei pouted. Lin Yi smiled and said, "Actually, I refined those elixirs myself." However, it was true that he was from the Hong Merchant Association. Is this for real? So many elixirs were refined by you? Ning Xuefei's eyes widened. At that time, the Hong Merchant Association was pushed aside by a few other merchant associations. They couldn't bring out any decent items for auction, so I helped Hong Zhong. That's how I got those elixirs. Lin Yi explained lightly.